He's lining it up. 5 seconds left. NIU up 16-14. 62-yarder. Snap, hold. Jeter's kick. It's blocked! It's blocked! It's blocked! Picked up by NIU! Picked up by NIU! The Huskies have done it! The Huskies with the biggest upset in NIU history! They come to South Bend, Indiana, and they knock off the number 5 team in the country. NIU 16, Notre Dame 14. The football gods were shining down on NIU.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
Nico is going to waltz into the end zone. Touchdown, Tennessee, 31 yards.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Pitch to Gordon, running left to the 10, Gordon to the 5, into the end zone, touchdown, Oklahoma State.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
7 yards deep, lets it go to the sideline, pick six. Tommy Hill, the short run to the house.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
This will be a 54-yard field goal attempt to give them the lead and probably the win. Conradi, kick on the way, and he got it.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on this Wednesday afternoon. As you get halfway through the week, next thing you know, you have college football tomorrow and, of course, Friday, and then into the weekend, NFL week number 2. Hope you've had a really good day, but also a day, and the Big 12 Conference put this up earlier today on their Twitter feed, is the remembering, never forget, 9/11. So, of course, the day that I remember where I was, all of us remember, if you're old enough, where you were when that news, when you started to see what was going on in the Twin Towers. And I'll say this, I think sometimes we say a lot when things like this happen, and we hope, but it's like we still get away from it instead of remembering what we do. We love this country no matter what of the infighting. So great image from the Big 12 from earlier today on their Twitter feed.
I hope that we also start to remember September 12th, 2001 as well, because I think in my lifetime, this country has never been more together and united and passionate about about who we are as Americans than we were that day. And it seems like every day since that day, we've been drifting further and further apart. And I hope that one day we can get back to a place where we're there.
Yeah, I still remember where I was, like a lot of other people. Sad day. Didn't even realize that it was today, really, until I started seeing all the things on the internet about remembrances and all that. But I remember exactly what class I was in and all the fallout from that day. And sad, but important to reflect back and just feel for the families that were affected. So many people on that day back in 2001. So yeah, it's somber, but important day to look back and reflect.
Jim Gaffigan, Paul, was he a comedian?
He is one of the best.
Yeah. Okay. He put this up. He said, I put this up every year on 9/11. It's just a part of that conversation with a passenger on one of the flights of 175 when he called his wife, Julie, and was telling, just got a little goosebumps because I remember some of the audio, the things that have been released. I'm on an airplane that has been hijacked and not looking good. I want you to know that I absolutely love you. I want you to do good, have good times. Same with my parents. I'll see you when you get here. I want you to know that I totally love you. Bye-bye, babe. Hope I will call you. And then, of course, there was another plane that crashed. And so, and there's the one about, the one that was people in the back and called, I think it might have been 911 about what was going on. But again, remember, some of you were bringing this up even yesterday on the anniversary of a horrible, horrible time, 9/11, 2001. I remember I was on radio for like 4 days. They shut it down because they were 24/7 coverage on ABC News. We had an ABC affiliate at the time, and it was 24/7 coverage of what was going on.
Yeah, I didn't have class for a couple days. Like, I was in college. I remember my roommate woke me up, and we didn't the next day. It was funny because the next day they didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody went to the early classes, and then it was every professor was like, I can't, what are we doing? So I remember sitting in the first class, we all kind of had it was like a group therapy session about what we just seen and what we were going through. And then we went home, and then, we just kind of people walked out in the hall and go, don't come. Every professor got an email and said, just go home. And then, when I got home, I saw the email hey, we'll come back Monday.
Not everybody in high school football that week played. I remember doing league football for the first, it had been about 10 years, and they were playing in Corsicana. And Jeff Berry, the coach, I talked to him on Thursday when I got information about his team for the broadcast, and they decided they're going to play. And I said, are we sure we're going to do this? He goes, yeah, I don't know why. I really don't know why. It wouldn't hurt us. It's a non-district game. They played the game. And then, of course, eventually life moved on, the first pitch at Yankee Stadium and much more with President Bush and onward from there. So just putting that out there. A lot of you who watch us have served our country. We appreciate you so much for doing that, no matter when it was. Now, I want you had the highlight, Paul, of Nebraska's Tommy Hill picking off Shedeur, right? On a 5 to 8 yard return.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask each of you this, and you know how it's been a drought. There haven't been many plays in the last 8 to 10 years as a Nebraska fan. There have been plenty for a lot of other programs where I actually, while watching the game, when he did that, I squealed. I literally jumped out of my chair and squealed, gave them a 14-0 lead. You guys have experienced that a lot more, almost to the point where you get used to it. Have you ever had that moment where you remember, literally, you saw Taylor Swift as a teenage girl and squealed?
I would squeal if I saw her now. I don't know. But no, I'll tell you, I was, it froze up. I was going to record it and play it for you because there's only 36 seconds. But Kermit Whitfield's kick return for a touchdown in the 2013 national championship game against Auburn was, and the people who are sitting there with me can tell you, I squealed and I was jumping on the couch. Woodrow was wagging his tail and thought he thought we were about to go on a walk or something. I don't know, but I was fired up because until that exact moment, I was like, well, this isn't going to happen. This whole season's a waste and all that. And then all of a sudden it just popped up and holy cow. Yeah. That was my moment for sure.
Craig.
Unfortunately, a lot of the games I've watched where that would have been happening, I'm sitting in the press box, so you can't really celebrate that way. So that's taken away quite a few. Like CeeDee Lamb's performance against Texas was in a press box. There's another OU Texas game was in a press box that were a couple that stand out. So no, I'm not a squealer to begin with. So I don't know that I really do that in general, but I don't know. I think the last play I can remember where I just kind of went crazy was, I know there's had to be something since then, but a lot of what I remember recently is sitting in press boxes, watching my team and not being able to do anything about it. So I don't know. I just throw something out there. Adrian Peterson running against Texas, but that was 10 years before I started working in radio. So I don't know. I can't think of something off the top of my head that specific that has happened, but that's a play that I'll always go back to of where I just went crazy as a fan and was obviously a huge fan of his and what was starting at that moment with the rivalry with Texas and his place in it, at least. That was a good time for Oklahoma fans. And so, that's just a play that I remember going crazy for in person, but a lot of it's been work-related ever since then.
Yeah, we were sitting in the section, actually was around a lot of UT parents and stuff for that game in the Cotton Bowl when Adrian Peterson popped that long, almost 50-yard run from near the goal line, their own goal line, and that was the start of that. Garrett, anything from you? You've had a nice little chunk of national title games. Anything in particular? How about like the throw? Was it against Kentucky?
That one way back?
Yeah.
That was a good one. I think the last time I really remember getting excited for a play would have been 2 years ago, I believe. Mason Taylor caught the game-winning touchdown against Alabama.
Okay.
And they were able to get that win. That was a big one for me that
all right.
I remember.
We all have that moment. It's been a while, and so I had to check myself to see if I was still breathing after that because I have not experienced that much at all.
A lot of the 1999 championship run, I was at those games, and it's a bit of a blur. So I would tell you, maybe I screamed. I don't know. I know there was a lot of bro hugging because we were in the stands, but not sure about anything else.
Bro hugging that. Yeah. Maybe
it was probably maybe a little bit deeper than bro hugging because a bro hug's really quick, but a lot of two dudes embracing and jumping up and down, like the beginning of an 80s sitcom.
I think we need to stop there. All right. So Texas, as you know, on a roll, what they did last year, losing in the semifinals and off to a great start with the rout of Michigan. Chip Brown with this note earlier today. After they lost to Oklahoma State in 2022, Texas was 1-6 in true road games under Steve Sarkisian. Since that time, Quinn Ewers and the Horns have become road killers. Not road kill, but big game hunters on the road, winning 8 straight games in opponent stadiums, including Alabama and Michigan. That is how you don't just win games and you compete for conference titles, but that's also how you get yourself in the national championship picture.
Yeah, you got to win. You got to win road games. A&M hasn't won one in forever. It feels like. I'm not sure exactly how long it's been, but how you win national championships is it doesn't matter where you go and play. It's just another stadium to you. And Texas certainly made the Big House just another stadium the other day by dominating Michigan the way they did. That game was not close from the jump, and you would never thought that they were playing in one of the most intimidating stadiums in the country.
Well, that's because they had a lot of their fans there. They didn't really feel like they were playing in one of the most intimidating stadiums in the country because they had 20,000 Longhorn fans that had showed up for that game, which not everybody's going to be able to do, and is testament to the excitement around that program right now. But yeah, I think they're on a great roll. They're winning big games. I do think it helps, and I don't want this to sound like it's taken away, but I think we can all acknowledge they've been very fortunate with the timing of at least the 2 non-conference games. What was Alabama last year? Is Jalen Milroe basically a baby out there trying to figure things out? And then you have this year where Michigan's national championship team has basically left. So again, not taking away from the wins, but that's also, I think, played into that. It's just also good timing, but good culture, good leadership. And it's made a perfect storm of going out and being able to win big games in your Texas. So you're not intimidated by a Michigan. You're not intimidated by an Alabama. You're on their level, if not in probably some cases for some fans feeling like you're above them. So yeah, I just think it's a combination of really positive things, and like I said, the best phrase is probably a perfect storm for them. But I don't know who's on the schedule next year. I haven't looked that far ahead, but they have really done a good job of scheduling, and it's been a situation where they've gotten a good amount of juice out of that squeeze. So like you didn't have to play those teams, but you did, and you got huge benefits from playing those teams as opposed to playing like UT Permian Basin or something like that.
Ohio State on the road next year.
Okay, yeah. So they'll have a new quarterback probably. Yeah, they will.
Might have a new coach if they don't
they're really, 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 really good. They're the only non-SEC team in the top 7, so I think they're fine right now. But yeah, it goes to Michigan, and maybe we talk something differently in 2 months. But yeah, they're loading up, and I think everything's going your way right now. If you're Texas, like literally everything, like the scheduling's fun. The SEC move makes that even more fun. You're winning big non-conference games and getting to go on big trips. You're making the playoffs. You've got NFL players on your roster. You don't have a question at coach or AD for the first time, consecutively in a really, really long time. So they're feasting right now for sure.
No question about it. So there's that. I thought we would share that after, because they've lost a lot of places on the road, but they've also won. I mentioned that yesterday at some of the cathedrals in college football. Speaking of the team they just beat, Michigan, Sharon Moore had his contract completed and signed, replacing Jim Harbaugh. That now is official. And I would think that if there was any questions, and he's going to you would hope, if you're Michigan, a really nice job. But after getting blitzkrieged at home, you would, hey, has he signed yet? You never know how that could affect recruiting when it comes to players and how they can negatively recruit. Hey, he hasn't signed his contract yet. He has signed his contract.
Well, part of it became a story because they looked so bad against Texas, and then you start thinking like, oh, are they going to try to back out of this? And then now it's not a story, but
yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting headline and very random because I don't know that we were sitting here expecting in week 3 to be talking about Sharon Moore's finalized contract. But my thing that would be like, okay, well, you're not going to fire him after a poor performance against Texas. That's ridiculous. Nobody would want that job if you'd fire a guy 2 weeks in and never sign him to a contract. So that part of the story of like, well, that's stupid. And the other side of it is, where's he going to go? Where he's going to leave Michigan after week 2 because you're unsatisfied with your contract after you get your ass kicked? Okay, yeah, go ahead. I'm sure the NFL will go open up a job for you to get you into the building. I mean, it's a weird timing thing, but the conclusion here was inevitable. Either side would be absolutely moronic.
I think the biggest thing was people were like, oh, could they Mel Tucker this guy? Because,
man.
Because that would
be such a terrible look.
Yeah. But like that was the thing. That's why it's the fact that Mel Tucker and I guess maybe even like Kevin Sumlin.
Who was Sharon Moore sleeping with?
Yeah.
Who did he bring in to talk to the team and tell them how bad they all are? Oh, that was just my experience with her. But I get what you're saying, dude. But that is very much internet fantasy, like the worst case scenario. This was just a weird timing thing. But yeah, the timing kind of sucks considering what just happened last weekend.
All right, so we've seen athletes have fans put out their cell phone numbers or whatever, right? Peyton Thorne, the quarterback at Auburn, says he has had people requesting money from him on Venmo after losses. Thorne says at the end of the day, you have to go back to where your foundation is in your life. And for me, that's my faith and family. Really? Like I've had it maybe twice PayPal, a random someone requesting for money that I'd never heard of. And of course, I just didn't do it and reported it. But this is a little bit much. It's kind of in a way, it's a little giggle here, but at the same time, no, this is crazy when you have fan bases doing this stuff.
Yeah, that's a bridge too far. And also, bro, you bet on Auburn. Like what did you like? What have they done the last couple of years to make you think for sure? They lost to Cal a year ago. Cal's not really that different of a team than they were, and neither is Auburn, other than some exciting freshmen they have. So if you bet on Auburn and lost, buddy, that's on you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not on
if you bet on anybody, even if it's the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, right?
Yeah. If you thought Peyton Thorne was all going to turn into Cam Newton in a year, well, Sorry about your luck. It didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, it is funny. I mean, I think that was the word you were looking for there. It is funny. I think that it's pretty understandable. Have y'all watched Peyton Thorne play?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if I was an Auburn fan, I'd be asking for my NIL money back or my betting money back too. He's not very good. He's not very good. They're not very good as a result of it. I mean, we'll see. They're not like a contender in the SEC by any means.
Threw 4 picks against Cal.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I kind of see where people are coming from, and it's definitely a joke. But, yeah, that's funny, and I'd be pissed, too, if my quarterback who I was betting on, if I was betting on a team to win and the guy throws 4 picks and I found his number, I doubt I would text him, but I'm also not an Auburn fan. So also take into account the people we're dealing with here. It's a little bit different. It just means more. More insanity and more bizarre behavior when your team loses, but that means more nonetheless. And so, yeah, this is what you get when you decide to go to Auburn after transferring, and this is what you get when you decide to go to Auburn in the gambling era of college and pro sports, which we're so firmly in now. It's crazy. And this is what you get when you throw 4 picks in the gambling era of college sports. So, yeah, I'm sure it's brutal on his end, but it's also funny, too. This is the kind of story you'd expect from college sports.
All right. At 3:40, Taylor McCark from ESPN and CBS, color analyst. At 4, John Kurtz on that K-State game coming up against Arizona. Mark Daniels, UCF, plays at TCU. He'll join us today. Also at 4:45, our Big 12 Pod 1, which is Texas Tech, TCU, Oklahoma State, and Baylor. Zach Gelb of Infinity Sports Network is at 5, and then a conversation we had with the great Grant Taft. Back when Baylor announced that they would play, and when they play Air Force, they would celebrate the 50th year of the Southwest Conference Championship, and Paul with his top 5. Please, if you haven't already, if you don't mind, click the like button if you like what we do, and if you haven't subscribed, that'd be great too, or pass the word along to many others. All right, trivia. Like to do this from the blitz that I get. Who's had the most wins so far? This might be just like too easy, like a 2-foot putt, although if you get nervous, you could miss it. Who has had the most wins in the decade of 2020 through 2023?
Georgia.
Georgia by 1 over Alabama. Let's see. 2000 and UTSA, by the way, is in that group too. Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and then Coastal Carolina, Liberty, Oregon, UTSA. Clemson's in that mix too. 2010 to 2019. Not even close.
Alabama
by 7 games over Ohio State and Clemson. Oklahoma was 4th. 2000 to 2009. I'll tell you this. Texas was 2nd on this list. LSU is the 8th. Ashton Genty.
Boise State
led the country.
Well, that would have been
by a couple of wins.
That would have been the Jared Zabransky, Kellen Moore back-to-back eras.
Oklahoma was 3rd, by the way, in that decade of the 2000s. 1990s.
Nebraska or Florida State.
Yeah,
right?
no. 109 Florida State. Actually, its percentage, the most wins was Marshall. They had 114. Florida State 109, Nebraska had 108 during that decade. In the 80s, we'll go through the 70s and then stop there. In the 80s, BYU was 3rd, Oklahoma was 4th. Miami was 2nd. And this is a decade they did not win a national title, but they led
Nebraska.
They had 103 that decade.
Nebraska?
Yep.
Okay.
They had 3 or 4 teams that like right on the edge of it, but they couldn't close the deal. And in the 1970s, my God, these are blue bloods from top to bottom. Texas was 9th. Penn State was 5th. Michigan was 3rd. The all-time most wins in the 1970s in college football.
Ohio
State was 6th. And, of course, that had a little bit of Woody Hayes on it. Oklahoma was 1 as far as winning percentage, but Alabama had 1 more win, but they also had 3 more losses, and that was the 1970s. So just a little note and a nugget about the winningest teams from the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 10s, and then also the current decade where we are. All right. Craig, we discussed this from Cody Kellner. The SEC, these are conference notes. The SEC, the Big 12, and MAC are the only three conferences to face 11 Power 5 non-conference opponents during the first 2 weeks of the season. All right, so that's who they played. The SEC has 3 non-conference wins versus opponents ranked in the AP Top 25. All other conferences in the FBS have 5 wins combined. So they have 3, and everybody else has 5 combined. Non-conference games against opponents ranked in the top 25 at the time of the game. After the first 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, the SEC has played 7. The Big 10 and the Big 12 have had 3, and the ACC has had 2. 3 teams in the nation currently 0-2 versus Power 5 conference and opponents, Western Michigan, Akron, and Florida State. Sorry, Paul.
Yeah.
And the SEC, last one, the SEC has faced 6 non-conference opponents ranked in the top 25. That leads all conferences. They have 2 non-conference wins against the current top 25. All other conferences in the nation have 2 top 25 wins in non-conference combined. So that's kind of flexing that muscle, even though it hadn't been the perfect start. It has still been where they are winning games that you have to win. And we'll get that from Cody at the end of each weekend. He will send that to me, and we'll pass it on to everybody if we possibly can. Paul, college football pick'em. Last week we gave that out. MC Gusto won it. Scotty B won it the first week. Do you have that up in the chat room?
I will. I've already made my picks. I'm on top of this thing.
I do that right away.
Yeah,
I do that right away. Where are we as far as the combined of us on the show or those involved in 365 Sports?
So you are behind Craig and I. We are both 13-7. You are 11-9. Garrett is 9-11. Jack is also 13-7. Emery is a late. Emery's going to be a late entry, so he is going to be 9-11 as he enters.
Wait a minute. How can you give him my record?
No, I gave him Garrett's record.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, I'm 11-9. That's right.
Yeah, you're
okay.
Yeah, don't sell yourself too short.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if I was 9-11. It would not surprise me whatsoever. If you want one person, chat room, listen to me. If you listen on the app or whatever, if you want one person, the first person on the timeline, 4 tickets for the Baylor game this Saturday evening against Air Force, text line is 254-339-1122. This from the Baylor ticket office, 254-710-1000. If you want 4 tickets, the first, I got a set of 4. If you want to go to the game, first one to get in the chat, in the text line, 254-339-1122. Text me. And if you are the first person, I'll be in contact with you on how I can get those tickets to you. I'm excited about that game. I don't know. I know Air Force had the loss to San Jose State. I'm excited maybe about just the atmosphere around the game with all of the military type recognition. And then, of course, just the fact that Air Force is in town. And interesting to see how Baylor will, at least for those who played in that game in 2022, how they react to it.
All right, we've got somebody, but I don't know who they are.
All right. We already got somebody on it. Okay. What have I missed from today? Anything, guys?
Oh, Julie Copeland.
Okay. Julie, okay. I'll be in touch with Julie. I got your number. I'll be in touch with you. Craig? Anything? Garrett? Anything? All right. When we come back, we're not done. Taylor McCarg around the corner. We've got a lot to get to today. 365 Sports, Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina. Also, Garrett Ross is running the mothership. And Emery Winter is here today in our studios, dialing up, already doing his magical stuff when it comes to 365 Sports tonight. This is 365 Sports. Petty Clinic, lowt.com. Dr. Ken Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. Testosterone, it happens. It drops. 1 out of every 3 to 4 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone. Energy is not the same. Focus is not the same. Your sleep habits aren't the same. Your body doesn't feel the same. And your sex drive is not the same. It can happen. All of those symptoms, or just maybe one of them, if any of that is a part of what you deal with right now, and you're probably in your upper 30s and 40s, and you're getting into the mid 40s and 50s, that can happen. 1 out of every 3 or 4 minutes, just kind of like the lottery. And so Dr. Kent Petty can help you out. Contact them, pettycliniclowt.com. Tell them I sent you, and they will set you up to get your blood work. They will take care of that for you. They get the results, and then Dr. Petty will look at the testosterone levels, and if they are too low or it is too low, he can put you in a program to increase your testosterone levels to help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be at pettycliniclowt.com.
Jeep Adventure Days are here at Allen Samuels in Waco. Drive home the 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee Hybrid and save $12,000. Plus, you may qualify for $7,500 in federal tax credit. Don't miss out on this powerful deal. Visit Allen Samuels in Waco today. First responders get an extra $500.
Come by. Let's be friends. In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Ghost Hydration is a fully transparent, fully loaded, full-flavored hydration drink that we've all been waiting for. Ghost is caffeine-free with electrolytes, 0 sugar, and low sodium that'll hydrate your body before, during, and after your workout. Consumer loved with authentic flavors, so grab and enjoy a Sour Patch Kids Blue Raspberry and Red Berry, along with the Kiwi Strawberry, Orange Squeeze, or Lemon Lime. Ghost Hydration can truly be used anytime. Remember, it's formulated for sports, but made for life.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
When you work with a bank, you should expect the best of everything. That includes face-to-face personal service and the kind of community banking care that only comes from one neighbor to another. That's exactly what you'll get from the First National Bank of Central Texas, where you will know your banker works just as hard as you do. Once again, that's the First National Bank of Central Texas. Settle for nothing less than the first. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
You know, last week we entered college football, and it didn't seem like there were, Texas, Michigan's a banger. NC State, Tennessee was supposed to be. And then there were a couple of others. They got a lot of hype on that game between Colorado and Nebraska, but 2 unranked teams. But it turned out to be, again, kind of a fun weekend in many ways in college football. We're kind of in that same mode this week. There's not really too many bangers when you look at top 25 against top 25. But I think we've proven that, or it's been proven that it doesn't matter. You can still have one hell of a weekend in college football.
Well, look, I think it's going to be a very interesting Thursday night in San Marcos with Arizona State there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Friday in the state of Kansas, no matter if you're a Jayhawk or a Wildcat, is going to be super interesting because UNLV is pretty good and already destroyed one Big 12 team. Now Kansas is much better, but didn't have their best week last week. Arizona, this is their first, real test. This is their first, Big 12 game, even though it's not. It's going to be very interesting then. Both lines, a touchdown and a half. So pretty close. And then there's going to be one that comes out of this weekend that we're not even thinking about where, Team Goliath plays Team what we think also ran and loses or gets close to losing, because that's That's what happened last week. Stuff's getting closer in the middle of college football. It's not getting closer at the top. We'll see how that happens over time with the playoff and transfer portal and house settlement and all these things and how those affect roster building one way or the other. But I think right now, unless you're a Georgia or a Texas or somebody who is maybe out in front of the curve of all this, Ohio State, you're kind of on a year-to-year thing, and you never know, what kind of year it's going to be.
We're also a slave to seeing numbers in front of teams and making that a worthwhile game to watch. That's why they put out preseason rankings, is to hype up games that may or may not actually feature top 25 teams. But, hey, we put that number on there, and it makes it more interesting for people to tune in, because that shows that this team's better, and especially if both of them have it, then that's a big game, and that definitely is justified as we move forward. I think early on it still remains to be seen a little bit, but then again, it's pretty clear who the best-looking teams have been through a couple of weeks, and having watched a good amount of football, I don't need the numbers. I think there's some interesting rivalry games that are being played this weekend. I mean, we got the Apple Cup, we got Civil War. I know that Oregon is ranked, but those games are interesting for various reasons, because they go beyond any conference. They go beyond. There's as much bragging rights as there possibly is. Mm-hmm. Two of the sides in those two rivalry games left the other sides for dead to basically wither away and completely die. And then the other two won a lawsuit, basically, or came to a settlement against the other two and their new buddies. Or their old buddies in the Pac-12 to get money from all of those teams. And so I just think how they play those two games, given the situation involving Oregon State and Washington State, is very interesting. And I don't need them to be ranked to find that outcome interesting, because what the hell happens if Oregon State and Washington State win those games? Like, how crazy would that be given the hand that they were dealt, and how bad of a look would that be for Oregon and Washington? Like, they'd get over it in 2 seconds because, hey, they're in the Big Ten and they're bigger schools or whatever. But man, that'd be some great bragging rights for the castaways in the Pac-12. But those are a couple of games that I think are pretty interesting. I think, obviously we have more of a Big 12 lean at times because, well, nobody did for forever. And so we were part of filling that gap, and we've covered them very closely. And as a result, I know, even though there's not rankings next to some of these games, that there's really interesting, like North Texas, Texas Tech's interesting, because what the hell happens if Texas Tech blows a tire again? What if they struggle against North Texas? What if they lose in North Texas at home? You say, that's crazy. They nearly lost to ACU in overtime at home. So it's not that crazy that North Texas could roll in there and give them some hell. So I'm interested, like, maybe only in a quarter, but maybe longer if North Texas is able to keep that close. So
I bet there's a lot of people walking that stadium. They're excited or whatever, but nervous as hell.
Hell yeah.
After what they've seen.
How would you not be? You nearly lost to ACU, and then you got your doors blown off by John Mateer and the Cougs up in Pullman. So, I mean, that game's interesting. It's not going to pull in, more than probably a couple million people. But, for me at least, Paul mentioned Arizona State, Texas State's a really interesting game to me because of what Texas State's been able to do in the start that Arizona State's off to. So those are a couple of games that aren't, ranking-based games. But,
West Virginia, Pittsburgh.
100
plus times.
It's interesting. It's, a rivalry game. West Virginia needs that win. Pitt with the big rally against Cincinnati. If they go beat two Big 12 teams 2 weeks in a row, I mean, you talk about that ACC trash talk. Well, hey, we just beat two of your teams back-to-back. And we did one of it, at their place and rallied to beat them behind Eli Holstein. So, those are a couple that jump out. But LSU, South Carolina, like I think that's somewhat interesting game. I know South Carolina's not as far along as probably people thought that they would be, or maybe hope they would be. But I do think that's still an interesting game. And it's got Tulane, Oklahoma. I mean, as an Oklahoma fan, I'm not 100% sold that they're just going to roll over the green wave, especially after Tulane just gave K-State a handful. I don't know how good K-State is, but I don't know how good Oklahoma is. They just nearly lost to what I thought was clearly the worst team in the Big 12 last week at home in Norman. They nearly lost to the Cougs and had a little bit of help and a little bit of luck and a little bit of just being better situated in every way, shape, and form as a program. And it took all of that to beat Houston last week. So I'm not putting it past Tulane. So, I'm just rattling, but A&M Florida is interesting, so there's a lot of interesting games.
That Houston game against Oklahoma and Norman, I kind of just took my head. I took just kind of stopped thinking about that game. I was like, okay. And then that's when I got a text from Daniel. He's like, Oh my God. And it's like, I did not even realize it was that dicey at the end because I was focused on a game that I was watching, which is really don't look around the scoreboard there. And you, my God, you're right. It was so close to that not ending up the way it needed to end up. Taylor McCarr from ESPN, CBS, color analyst, television analyst with us on 365 Sports. And Taylor, thank you very much for your time. What games do you have this week?
Man, guys, I'm going to Kalamazoo, Michigan. I've never been. It's my first ever MAC game, but I've got Western Michigan this week, which it's a whole new world for me. And then back to the Big 12 next week with Iowa State. So we got to going all over the place the next couple of weeks.
What was your thought about Iowa State and how they closed out and beat a team that has really kind of run that rivalry, and a huge win for Matt Campbell and the Cyclones?
Oh man, if you're Iowa, you just got to be sick. The chances that they had inside the 10-yard line, I think a couple even inside the 5-yard line, where if they had just capitalized on even one of those, that they ended up settling for short field goals. That game's out of reach, and we're not having this conversation. But credit to that staff and those kids for Iowa State for not giving up. That's a tough place to play. At Iowa is a really challenging place to play, and to get that win in a rivalry game, that could change the entire trajectory of your season. That was a massive win for Iowa State.
Taylor, it was dicey for Kansas State against Tulane. The American very well. John Sumrall, a really great hire there for Tulane. Do you think this will be maybe more the norm for Tulane going forward, kind of like they were with Willie Fritz, where they're not really going anywhere? They're just kind of reshaping in the image of a new coach.
Well, I really thought Summerall was a fantastic hire, and if you track his success when he was at Troy, they won the Sun Belt Conference in his first year as the head coach. So I think most people were not expecting a big drop off, and I think that's clear for Tulane. There's still a lot of talent on that team. I think the thing that's jumped out to me though is just the play of Darian Mensah. Just through the first couple weeks of the season, but especially against Kansas State, he didn't blink at quarterback for Tulane. And they're a offensive pass interference call late in the fourth quarter away from that game going to overtime. Kansas State fortunate to get out of there with a win. I did not think Kansas State was particularly sharp on the other side. I thought there was some sloppy play overall. Offense, I didn't think was really all that crisp, especially throwing the football. And they're fortunate that they created the 2 turnovers on the defensive side and turned Tulane over a couple times. I thought that was the difference in the game and the scoop and score. But, regardless, getting an early season win on the road, Tulane's a good team. I still think I would have Tulane in there in the mix with Memphis and Boise State as a group of 5 representative of potential for the playoffs. So for Kansas State, it doesn't matter. You got out of there with a win. But Tulane on the other side, I was really impressed with the Green Wave.
Kind of sticking with that theme here, Taylor, I know you got some eyes on Oklahoma State and Arkansas, a game where Oklahoma State had to overcome, playing a team that was playing a bit better and do some things late to make sure that they got that win. I guess 2-part, just your thoughts on how Oklahoma State escaped that game in some ways, but also Taylor Green, what a difference he's made for the Razorbacks.
I said it about Iowa, about how you have to be sick. I mean, for Arkansas, truly sick to your stomach that you lost that game. They outgained Oklahoma State by 250 yards. They dominated time of possession. They won time of possession by more than 10 minutes. I want to say it was like 13 minutes of time of possession that they were ahead of Oklahoma State. And Oklahoma State felt like every break down the stretch went their way. Some of it was forced errors and poor play. The turnovers were critical for Arkansas, turning the ball over 3 times. I thought Taylor Green did some really nice things. He looked more like the player that we saw at the beginning of his time at Boise State. I had Boise State towards the end of his stretch there when I didn't think they were utilizing him particularly well, and it looked like he had lost his confidence. For most of this game against Oklahoma State, he had that back. He was playing sharp, moving around well. He had that strike that was dropped in the end zone, but he's working left and throws a 55, 60-yard strike into the back of the end zone that ends up being a drop. But he's got that kind of talent. But for Arkansas to end up losing that game, all of a sudden, that's the kind of those are the teams under Sam Pittman, or the games I should say under Sam Pittman, that that's become more of a trend. And not being able to get out of there out of Stillwater with a win is just incredibly disappointing for a team that they outplayed Oklahoma State for 3.5 quarters of that game.
I agree with you. Yeah, there's no question. I thought at one point that in kind of then Oklahoma State just fought back, and great win for them considering where they were at one point. Paul?
Yeah, just for look, Sam Pittman is on the hot seat, Taylor, and that game was one of the ones that could have maybe taken him off. Do you think it maybe at least keeps the temperature the same level, given that he wasn't able to finish that job?
Absolutely. And I think if you look at, and the Cover 3 guys do a great job of they're all over this. There is something in Sam Pittman's contract with regards to his buyout that if after a certain date, if he has a win percentage that's below a certain level, his buyout gets slashed by a pretty significant amount. And so if they don't start winning games quickly, it becomes much more reasonable and cheap, or cheaper, or I shouldn't say cheap, but for Arkansas to move on from Sam Pittman. And so now, if you're an Arkansas fan, you're looking down the line, where are the wins going to come from? They've got a tough stretch coming up. They got a couple road games, have to go to Auburn, have to go to Texas A&M, Tennessee at home after that, who Tennessee, after beating NC State, that looks like one of the top 5 teams in the country. So I don't know where there's not a lot of wins that you circle and say, okay, you feel good about that. They've got the Longhorns coming to town later in the year in November. I think losing that game in the way that they did to Oklahoma State, all of a sudden now you're just worried, is this a team that even makes a bowl? 6-6 is not the expectation for Arkansas. They want to get back to trying to compete for the West, which I know they haven't done that in a long time. But 6-6 is not going to get it done. And if anything, I don't know that they're going to get to bowl eligibility.
Taylor, what have been your thoughts on what you've seen from Dylan Raiola? Obviously a big win for Nebraska. He didn't have to carry the load on his shoulders, but he did have to make some plays, and he's made a bunch of plays in these first couple of games for the Huskers, and he's a clear upgrade from what they've seen at that position for quite a while now. As such a young guy, what stands out to you so far from what you have seen from him?
Well, I think Matt Rule, first off, the confidence that he has his guys playing with, that helps having a freshman quarterback, and Raiola has looked fantastic. I thought they shut him down a little bit in the second half. I mean, if you just look at how that game went, it looked like they were going to run away and hide in that game in the first half. Colorado's still just refusing to run the football. I think ran for less than 10 yards total. The defense on the other side for Nebraska playing really physical, but you can just see with Raiola, there is a confidence that's building with his guys around him. They have a belief in their quarterback, and it was obviously a big deal when he went there. And that's the kind of guy that if you could keep on campus, and it says all the right things. He seems to enjoy and love Nebraska. And if you're a Nebraska fan, that's what excites you. Is you're going to go win the Big Ten this year? No, probably not. But are you building towards, in another 2 or 3 years, you keep all the key pieces, you portal in a couple other guys, and you keep this anchor quarterback? That's how you start to build towards something that you get back to. You're trying to get Nebraska back to the heyday of the 90s. And it's going to start with Raiola, and he looks the part right now, and is obviously played really well in the first half a week ago.
You mentioned Craig brought up Texas, and you guys they went into Ann Arbor. I just felt like they just had too much, and Michigan just kind of struggles on offense, and they overwhelmed them. Quinn Ewers, he didn't have monster stats, but he was just almost flawless in that game, and it was one-sided almost from the beginning. Your thoughts about where the Horns are? And I know this sounds silly. It's way too early, but it's almost like we're on our way to a collision course between Texas and Georgia, and maybe 2 or 3 different times.
Agree with everything you said. I thought Texas came out and they were crisp straight away. And even though they came on that first drive, they don't come away with points. If that touchdown doesn't get wiped away for the hold, we're talking about just an all-out blowout. And it was never really close. But I thought the thing that was most impressive from Quinn Ewers is the times that Michigan did get them in 3rd and long situations. That was maybe when he was most accurate. And he hit some of those layered throws where he has to move up in the pocket a little bit and have to float a ball over a linebacker, but underneath the safety. Those are really difficult throws. And Michigan still has, there's a lot of dudes that are going to play in the NFL that are on the defense for Michigan. And I thought the team speed also, going beyond Quinn Ewers, team speed across the board for Texas. They looked a half step faster than Michigan at basically every position. And that was interesting to see because a year ago, Michigan was just that swarming defense where they would suffocate you. And all game, Texas was able to get on the perimeter. They got good push inside. And the last thing that I would say, Michigan was so afraid of Texas' RPO game and getting the ball on the perimeter in space. That's what allowed them, I think, to run the football so well. And the rest of the season through SEC play, there's only, you said it, there's really only one team that I think is going to be able to line up and play a light box well against Texas at all. And I think that's Georgia.
Taylor, I want to go back to Colorado for a second. Do you think there's anything that they can do in this particular season to fix their problems up front on both sides of the ball?
No, I don't think Colorado's not a very good football team. I mean, there's all of the media hype, and there's Coach Prime, and there's a couple key pieces with Shador. There are some Travis Jackson, obviously, but it's not a very good football team. And if it wasn't for the NFL talent and Coach Prime, this would not be a team that we talk about. A year ago, some of the pieces that they brought in, and some of which that are still starting today, you're talking about guys that either were on FCS rosters or Group of 5 rosters and were not great players at that level. And it shows up still to this, go back to last week against Nebraska. The talent's not there across the board, and they're not able to run the football. And they're playing in a conference on the defensive side that they're not built for some of the offenses that they're going to have to face the rest of the season. And it's honestly, I have fatigue, and I'm sure you guys do too, of every week they're on national television and there's a huge audience and they just don't look very good. And I think that's going to be the case the rest of the season. And I would imagine there's a lot of other people that have fatigue from having to talk about a Colorado team that's just not very good.
You, I believe, saw that Air Force San Jose State game this past week. And, of course, Air Force in Waco to play Baylor. Last time they met, it was a miserable night, cold weather, and it was miserable for Baylor because Air Force dominated that game. We had Troy Calhoun on yesterday. Loved listening to what he had to say about the academy and all that. What did you see from Air Force?
Well, I love Coach Calhoun and have all the respect in the world for him. I'm going to piggyback off of some of what he said the last couple of weeks. They are so green. They're so young. They've replaced effectively everybody on both sides of the ball, especially on offense. They are also banged up. Their top 2 or 3 ball carriers did not play a week ago, and they're struggling to move the football. They didn't really move the ball very well in week 1 against Merrimack. And then last week against San Jose State, less than 200 yards of offense. They were never really in that game. They got down early, and outside of one drive that they capitalized on a turnover, never really got on the other side of the 50. And so for Baylor, this really just comes down to don't turn the ball over. Don't give them short fields. I don't think they're going to have a difficult time. This is not an Air Force team that's talented enough to come in and pull an upset in Waco. This is truly, of all the years for Coach Calhoun, we played them in a bowl game. Of all of the years that I've followed Air Force, I think this is the most junior and inexperienced I've ever seen them. And it's going to be, this to me is a true rebuilding year for a team that they can't go out and portal kids in. What they got is what they got. And there's a lot of youth on that team right now. And they're struggling on offense to find that identity.
How much do you sleep before Rice plays at Houston this weekend?
Oh man, I'm still not over the Sam Houston State loss. I hope this should be a good game because both of these teams, I think it's like a 3-point line or a 4-point line. Houston, they got get steamrolled week 1 against UNLV, and then last week I thought they looked pretty solid in Norman. That game was tight late until that safety, but it should be entertaining. Obviously, want to see Rice retain the Bayou bucket. It was big for them to get that a year ago, and definitely get back on schedule if they can figure out a way to get a win at Houston, move to 2-1, and I'll be back in a better mood if they can pull off the upset against Willie Fritz.
Have safe travels, Taylor. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Taylor McHargue with us, TV color analyst on 365 Sports Wednesdays in the 3 o'clock hour.
Baylor, Colorado in a couple weeks. Bears got to beat Air Force, and Colorado has to beat Colorado State. I think both should do that. Both are favored to do that. I said should do that, but I mean, I want to reinforce that they should. They both have no excuses to lose to either one of those teams this weekend. So that sets up a game in Boulder on Saturday night. Speaking of what Taylor was talking about, of national TV audiences for a bad Colorado team, and that's what you're going to get with maybe two bad teams in Baylor and Colorado. I don't know. They should both be 2-1, and we'll see what comes out on the other side of that. But that's a much more winnable game for Dave Aranda than I thought at the beginning of the year.
Yep.
I thought, that would be, you go to Boulder, the altitude and all that. Well, you just played in Salt Lake City. I know it's a different, higher altitude in Boulder, like significantly, but same sort of concept, same area that you're traveling to, not as far as you just traveled, but you're going the same direction, basically. You're going to have like some familiarity getting back on the bus a couple weeks after you just went to Utah. So maybe that's not as big of a deal. And I just think in general, you can shut down the run. Everybody can, because you don't play against the run when you play Colorado. But even if you did, I feel good Baylor can stop a Colorado run. Like, can they stop the passing game? They got to beat Air Force first, but that's a winnable game for them. And that could be you throw some dirt on them at their place, or start throwing dirt on Dave Aranda. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, just the feel around everything. He's got to win some games, and that's a prime opportunity to go win a big game. Because every time a big game comes up, we hyperventilate and we overthink and we do this stuff like with Baylor, like that.
And apparently, with Dave Aranda saying his team did that too.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, I thought you were talking about us.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, all right.
No, we don't overhype them.
No,
do the opposite.
I just wanted to clarify that.
No, this team is overhyping over a regular season week 2 road game against Utah. Like, come on, fellas. Like, just go play football. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, I can imagine going to Colorado and it's Dion and it's all this. Like, who knows what team shows up, but they can go win that game in Colorado. But they gotta worry about Air Force first. But we'll obviously talk a lot about that
this week. The next 3 weeks will show us everything we need to know about them. They could if Dave Aranda is going to keep his job, I do think that I'll tell you after they're 4-1 and winning the next 3 games, because Air Force, Colorado, BYU, very, very winnable games for them. So that's 4-1. That means they've got to find 2 the rest of the way out to get back to a bowl game and kind of reestablish themselves on an upward trajectory. Those games are all very winnable. The problem with this team has been, when you say these games are all very winnable, that's not how they deliver.
Yeah.
And, to Craig's point, and then look, they've got Tech, who we know is, they're deep in it right now. They're in panic mode.
Yeah, who knows if they've turned the corner or they're still kind of like.
And then later
drowning.
in the year they have Houston. So there are games you can see on this schedule that
I don't think, though, Paul, everything you're saying is
that
right.
We'll get there, but we have to we can't even.
When you're 3-9, you can't look 3 games down the road.
If you're looking at the schedule now as opposed to what you thought it was going in, it's all of a sudden starting to look a little bit better.
Why?
Because some of the teams on it are worse than we thought they were.
Yeah,
Colorado,
Colorado and Tech.
Kansas isn't like some unbeatable force. You got Kansas at home, you got Colorado on the road, but you got you don't play K-State. You've already played Utah. Like, you play Oklahoma State at home. This is if he doesn't make a bowl game, like, it's all on him. There's really no excuses because there's no like, oh man, Colorado's a loss. No, it's not. They can beat them. BYU's a loss. No, it's not. They can beat them. I mean, so go beat Air Force. That's what they got to worry about, because the last time we talked about playing Air Force, it was a once in a lifetime weather event. It was also a bowl game at your rival stadium, which that's just they should not even have accepted that, honestly. Like, that was so stupid from the start. That That took like you can't do that to your fans, man. Like you're gonna go to TCU Stadium and play a bowl game. Like I don't know.
I wonder what a team can do.
I don't think they could have probably done too much, but like, come on now, like how are you supposed to get excited
could have
about
like
that?
gotten on the phone and go, guys, come on.
Well, I don't know, but the point being is that they have a winnable game in front of them, but it was winnable the last time they played. This is a much different Air Force team, and so go take care of business, and then we can really have fun after this weekend plotting their rest of the course. But assuming they win this weekend, yeah, they could win 3 straight, and then we get to like Iowa State, and then you go, okay, well, there's a stop sign in the middle of the road. But if you're 4-1, who knows how the hell you're playing at that point and what kind of your confidence is.
Also, on that bowl game, the Big 12 needs to not agree to bowl games that are played in a Big 12 team stadium. Like that. That's
attached to the conference.
Yeah,
right?
I know, but like that's one of those things. Like you agree to it, and they're like, "Oh, we're going to play it at TCU Stadium." Look, Baylor obviously is going to have the worst of it because that's their biggest rival. That's the rival. But if Tech or Oklahoma State or somebody else wound up in that game, I guarantee you they'd be as flaccid about it as Baylor fans were.
Yeah.
I mean,
cool city and cool place for other people, but if you already play there like every 2 years, then what's the big deal about going to a bowl game to play there? And they did. Like, I want to say this. TCU did a great job hosting that game, especially that day because the day was so
miserable,
just awful in general.
A frozen hellscape.
Yeah. And then the game that night wasn't any better. But, yeah, I think that I'm with Paul here of, like, what kind of a reward is that? Especially if you just played them that year there already. Like,
and you lost.
And hey, you go back to the place you already played against your conference rival. Like, happy bowl game. I mean, I don't know how you get fired up for that, but it is what it is, and I understand why that might make sense. But I don't think that's a very great reward for Big 12 conference teams. All due respect to the bowl and to the people who run it because they did a great job.
The only thing that's different was we're going to go to a different restaurant this time.
Right.
Like that's it.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you guys are going to Fort Worth. Like, oh, so. Different place? Yeah, we'll go to the Cheesecake Factory. You guys knock yourselves out. Like, there's no excitement about that. So, yeah. Also, I think that when it comes to Air Force, again, looking at the beginning of the year, we never really know, how the service academies are going to be based on how their talent comes in and comes out. But had this been the Air Force's team from last year, this would have been a white knuckle moment for Baylor because that was a damn good team last year. But they lost 10 starters off the offense. So
everybody Baylor played last year was good.
Yeah, it's worked out
better.
It's worked out that those guys are gone and Air Force is green. So make sure that continues to work out for you. Go win a game at home when you're celebrating the greatest moment in school history and all that stuff. There's a seminal moment. Like, do all that. Make it a good day.
They come out and they go 3 and out and they throw 3 or 4 straight incomplete passes. God knows what could happen. But again, that's coming up Saturday. We will
way to hype up the game. Like, now turn on out for the game.
I said that I'm going and I'm looking forward to it because of the pageantry of this game. Because they're going to have a 100-yard American flag and they're going to have a flyover and it's Air Force. And, as a military brat or not, I think that's pretty cool. No matter what kind of team that Troy Calhoun's bringing into Waco to play against Dave Aranda. All right, when we come back, we'll hear from John Kurtz, Kansas City Sports Network. They are K-State hosting Arizona, a non-conference game with a lot of implications, 2 top 20 teams. That is next. This is 365 Sports. I do this every time.
Baylor Club.
I'm going to do that. You're right. The Baylor Club. By the way, speaking of that, the Baylor Club coming up this Saturday and throughout the rest of this week, they have a lot of great specials at the Baylor Club and including what will be game day alone with all the events, the tailgating at the HEB tailgate and much more with what is happening at the Baylor Club this week. I got this email from Skylar, 10-second highlights of the ship. Membership of the Baylor Club comes with exclusive perks, special events to premium dining. Don't miss out. Sign up today. Call Skylar at the number I'm about to give you in just a second. I'll give you a second if you want to write it down. Private events, planning a special event. The Baylor Club has you covered with luxurious spaces, customized catering. We do our Academic All-Stars banquet there every year, and they are spectacular. Book your next big day at the Baylor Club and reach out to Taylor or Sarah for more information on special events. Craving a dining experience that's a cut above? Baylor Club serves up gourmet meals with a view of McLean Stadium, and you can reserve your table by contacting them. Game day this Saturday. Celebrate Baylor's pride at the Baylor Club, from alumni gatherings to game day activities and festivities. The club is your home for everything green and gold. Sick 'em Bears. Visit BaylorClub.com.
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. It's that time of year. It's football season. Bird Colgan Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 selling truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, 47 years in a row. Come see the largest showroom in Texas and experience better at Bird Colgan Ford.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
It's football and tailgate season. If you want product for the grill or smoker, charcoal, seasonings, marinades, sauces, Waco Custom Marketplace is your home to help prep, cook, and enjoy your food. Tailgate must-like brisket, tri-tip, fresh-made burgers, sausage, chicken wings, and if you want steaks, call in your order and pick them up. Bacon wrap fillets or any kind of ribeyes. USDA Select Choice and Prime that melt in your mouth. House-made sausage and jerky. Also, Waco Custom Marketplace, a one-stop shop for tailgating, barbecue, cook-offs, and family get-togethers, fundraisers with fair prices to you, the customer. A bakery with fresh baked bread and kolaches. There's cold beer, wine, and soft drinks. Serving Waco restaurants and families since 1940. A cut above the rest. Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em Bears.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
John Kurtz, Kansas City Sports Network with us. 365 Sports, Kansas State hosting Arizona, non-conference game, top 20 game, and a game that will be rather interesting to see how that goes. John, thanks for your time with Paul and Craig and Smokey. What is missing? It's early. They've won, but what is missing from K-State, in your opinion, at least early on?
Yeah, well, good to talk to you guys. Appreciate you having me on. I expected the defense to be ahead of the offense at the beginning of the year, just because, as much hype as Avery Johnson has generated, it is a new starting quarterback. He's just a sophomore. When he started the opener against UT Martin, it was his second career start at quarterback. And then you have a new offensive coordinator, a pretty new offensive line. There's just a lot that I figured was going to take some time to really lock in. I will say Avery Johnson has had some spectacular moments, like his first touchdown throw on Saturday against Tulane. But he has been a little bit more raw and inconsistent than I think most of us thought. And certainly the hype probably got a little too out in front, cart in front of the horse sort of thing on that. But really, I think the offense has been much better in the second half, and I saw some pretty good things in the second half against Tulane in particular. The surprise to me has been the defense, while dominant in week one, looked awful against Tulane, and that was the unit that you felt like this team was really going to lean on. And in particular, the secondary. I thought they had a chance to have the best secondary in the Big 12. Phil Steele ranked them as the best secondary in the Big 12. And
his preview magazine, and they had guys just running like high school wide open against Tulane, which, as weird as it sounds, I actually do think in a way is better than if it were, guys playing man coverage and getting beat by a step or two, because that would indicate you don't have the guys that can stay in front of real dudes at wide receiver. With K-State, it was like playing zone, and so it was just coverage bust. Like somebody's in man when everybody else is in zone. It was mistakes like that, which seemed to be more fixable, especially when, Joe Klanderman's a great defensive coordinator, and he's a secondary guy. And Chris Kleiman is a safeties coach by nature and a defensive guy. So, I trust that they'll get something figured out that's going to be a little bit better than what we saw for the most part against Tulane. But like that to me has been the real surprise. I just think they're going to need to lean on the defense a little bit until the offense like really totally finds its footing. And I think there are some pretty easy fixes for the offense too, like get Dylan Edwards the ball more. The guy's averaging 9 yards a touch and only has 12 through the first 2 games. And they've acknowledged that this week, that they need to get him the ball more. So like it was great that they got a win, because I think there are a lot of lessons that they can learn, and you'd much rather learn from a win than a loss. But to me, the thing I'm circling heading into this game on Friday is like, what is the deal with the defense? Is that blip on the radar, or is that legitimately going to be trouble this year?
John, do you think that Avery Johnson will, in a game where their running game could possibly get stuffed, because you have those days where it's just not your day, throw the Wildcats to a win?
I think it's a good question right now. I'm kind of undecided on that. He has made some tremendous throws. Not just the first throw that he had for a touchdown against Tulane was kind of the Mahomesian off balance, off platform, across your body, through a couple of defenders, through an incredibly tight window to the back of the end zone at a weird arm angle. But then he had, a wheel route on 4th and 1 down the sideline, perfectly in stride to DJ Gittens for, I believe, like a 45-yard touchdown. He also hit Keegan Johnson on a huge deep ball when they really needed it, when Tulane had taken a 7-point lead in the second half. So he has shown the capability to do all that. It's just not consistent enough right now. He missed 2 deep balls that one probably would have been a touchdown to Sterling Lockett. Another one was not going to be a touchdown, but would have been a huge gain to Jake Jackson. So he's just a little too, and I heard him talking about it this week at his press conference. He just said when I believe he said drifting back to his left, he has a tendency to put too much on the ball. And we've seen that a handful of times so far this year. So that's a question. I think that's a legitimate question to ask right now. I'm not sure that Friday is going to be the game when the running game will be stopped, based on what we've seen from Arizona's defense so far this year. They really struggled with a running quarterback in week 1, which, hopefully that'll open some things up for Avery's legs. And that maybe is a point to focus on too. They really have not gotten Avery Johnson's legs going a whole lot yet this year. And I honestly would like to see them probably do a little bit more of that, at least getting him on the run. He's made some really good plays on the run, but when he's sitting back there in the pocket, like straight up pocket passer, that is where some of these overthrows have come from. And that's why I kind of answer the question like this, but I think that's definitely a fair question to ask right now.
What's Manhattan like for a game on a Friday night?
I think it'll be awesome. I mean, it's the if you can believe it, it's the first top 20 matchup at Bill Snyder Family Stadium since 2014 when they hosted Auburn in a non-conference game. Which, going back to it, I mean, that is one of the best atmospheres I can remember. To me, that's in contempt. Probably 2011 Baylor when they played RG3 and 2014 Auburn were the best 2 post Snyder coming back. Now, Snyder 1.0, I could give you a whole list of games that were probably a little bit better, but we've seen, and that was a Thursday night. So similar kind of setup and atmosphere and a lot of buildup in the non-conference. There's been a lot of buildup to this one too, because everybody knows what Arizona did last year. And hey, Arizona's coming in with the nation's longest winning streak in this game. So I think the fans are going to be ready and they'll be geared up for it for sure. So I do expect probably hitting another level that K-State hasn't hit in a little while in this game. We were talking about this actually on the Fremont podcast earlier this week. A couple of years ago when they hosted Kansas, you would have thought based on the season KU was having then, the resurgence in their light bowl, that would have been one of the better atmospheres, but it was rainy and cold and it kind of, drug down some of the atmosphere there. So I do think it's been a minute since we've seen a game and an atmosphere that sets up to be as good as what we're going to see on Friday.
John, when you look at the first couple of weeks of the Big 12 and you've had Colorado obviously off to a rocky start, Colorado State next, and then they host Baylor. We saw what happened to Tech with a frightening game against ACU and then getting bludgeoned by Washington State. There's a couple of teams. Houston looked like terrible. Then they almost go to OU, which may be more damning to OU and win that game. Who has underperformed and who has maybe outperformed your expectations in a good way?
Well, to go in reverse order, I mean, the team that's outperformed my expectations the most is Arizona State. I mean, goodness, you got to give those guys a lot of credit. And Kenny Dillingham, I had zero in the way of expectation for them this year, and that's really nothing against him. I do think that I liked him as a hire, I'll put it that way, for Arizona State a couple of years ago. But to come out and just completely decleat, Wyoming, I mean, that's a program that's been pretty salty. Obviously, you can ask Texas Tech about that, what happened last year. So that was an impressive result. And then I know the final score doesn't look that impressive against Mississippi State, but they had an SEC team down 30-3 in the game on Saturday. So, Cam Scadaboo and company, like that's a good team that I think Kenny Dillingham has out there, or at least a solid team, a team that can probably compete for a bowl bid. So, right, all this is like relative to expectation, but I felt like, especially based on the schedule that ASU had this year, that was probably going to be like a 3-9 sort of team. I mean, there have been Texas Tech obviously is, I think, the biggest disappointment so far, and they've been hit with a slew of injuries, which I feel for Texas Tech fans because that's been just a recurring theme there. But at a certain point, man, you've got to turn some of that hype into actual wins on the field. I know Tech fans are probably tired of me telling this story, but there was a Tech fan friend of mine who gave me a little bit of grief in the offseason when I went on a podcast and said, hey, here's 8 teams I think could legitimately win the Big 12, and I didn't list Tech. And I just said, hey, man, they haven't won 9 games since Mike Leach was there. Like, I need to see it. I love Joey McGuire's personality. Truly do. Had a great chat with him at Big 12 Media Day. Love the personality. I can see why he's a great recruiter. They're recruiting well, but it's just not translating yet on the field right now. So they're going to have to do something. Also, I got bought in on the West Virginia hype toward the end of the offseason. They had kind of turned me around on that. And that game against Penn State was incredibly disappointing, just to never be in it. I don't think the season is totally written off for the Mountaineers by any stretch of the imagination. I think it'll be really interesting to see how both they and Kansas bounce back, because I view them in sort of a similar vein, right? Obviously, those teams have been disappointing to start the year, but I think they still have quite a bit of upward mobility based on the rosters that they have, particularly Kansas. I just think there's so much talent on that offense, especially. They should get better, as long as maybe with Kansas they have some self-awareness from their offensive coordinator in Jeff Grimes. We'll see. But that's kind of I just feel like right now the league feels very wide open. Like, Utah's got a Cam Rising injury already, and we see how vastly different that team is when he's not in the game. K-State has not looked sharp. Oklahoma State gets outgained. They give up 600 plus yards. They didn't even hit 400 yards themselves last week. Pretty lucky to get out of there alive. So your top 3 favorites, if you want to lump Arizona into that group too, I mean, they have not been overly impressive either the first 2 weeks of the season. So you're looking at it like, man, I mean, the favorites all look definitely vulnerable. And here comes Iowa State, right, with a great win that they had. Not all that impressive in week 1, but incredibly gutsy comeback that they had in week 2 to beat Iowa. So this feels to me like a league that's really wide open, and even a team in the tier of like UCF, TCU, heck, BYU, that got the big win over SMU. I think it's open for a team out of that group to really jump up and challenge too. So I do think it's kind of setting up right now for what a lot of people really expected and marketed the league as, which is, a league where you're going to have a ton of parity and probably a handful of teams that could legitimately win it.
Who do you think is living on the razor's edge a little more between Oklahoma State and Kansas? Kansas, a team that didn't run the ball when they were running the ball well late. Jeff Grimes can pretty much fix that by calling more runs to Neal and Highshaw. But Oklahoma State defensively clearly got some issues, lost their best player in Colin Oliver. He's out. They gave up all those yards, and Ollie Gordon wasn't a factor until the end of that game. Who's riding that line more, or am I splitting hairs?
Man, probably splitting hairs a little bit. I think it's tight. Like, I'd be inclined to say Oklahoma State is the one that will struggle a little bit more the rest of the year because of such a crucial injury, which, there have been a lot of pretty tough injuries across the league so far this year. So, you hate to see that for Colin Oliver, but it's like the defense has really been the problem. Even the South Dakota State game, they gave up a lot of chunk plays, some pretty big plays. So I am worried about the Oklahoma State defense and the running game. I mean, it's weird that they haven't been able to run the ball as well as you would have expected either so far this year. And for Kansas, it's like, well, nobody's hurt. I mean, Jalen Daniels is still there. All those receivers are still there. Devin Neal, Highshaw, all those guys are still there. They should be able to still put together a pretty explosive offense. But I would actually say I'd be slightly more worried about Kansas, and it's really just because I'm going to give Mike Gundy the edge for being so consistent over the last 2+ decades of time that he's been there in Stillwater. Like, they just always figure it out. I mean, they looked 10 times worse at this point last year and figured it out to the tune of making it to the Big 12 championship game and having a double-digit win season. I think Lance Leipold's really good, but I will say I was a guy the last 2 years when Kansas had their rise in 2022. I thought, man, like, we should be talking more about this offensive coordinator. Like, Andy Kotelnicki is really good. He schemes guys wide open. He is so tough to beat. I mean, I think go back and watch the K-State game last year and the game plan that he put together with Cole Ballard, a third-string walk-on. I mean, had K-State totally dead to rights, and if they don't drop a pick six, they're probably winning that game going away last year. I think he's a star, and I do wonder about losing him, just how big of a deal that's going to be. And for that matter, I mean, maybe Jason Bean, too, who probably didn't get enough credit when he was there. So I have slightly bigger questions with Kansas, even though, like, on paper, you'd probably say Oklahoma State. I've seen it way more and way longer from Gundy just being able to figure it out.
Who do you think is the worst team in the Big 12 right now?
Oh, difficult question, because it would have been an easy answer of Houston after week one. But, man, putting a huge scare into Oklahoma is crazy. If I'm doing it kind of like merit-based and just like eye test right now, like, who is the team that has appeared to be the worst to me that I've actually laid my own two eyes on watching play, it's probably Texas Tech. Now, I don't think that Texas Tech is likely to finish as the worst team in the Big 12, but I will just say I've seen the least out of them so far this year. If we're doing this, like, if we're power ranking teams, right? If you're doing it that way, I think Texas Tech would belong at the bottom with the close win over Abilene Christian and getting blown out at Washington State. And you combine that with, as I mentioned, just their health situation right now, I'd probably have to go Texas Tech. I think they probably should pull themselves out of that. Cincinnati is a contender, but, like, I can't imagine how they actually lost that game on Saturday. They had Pitt totally beat. So for right now, I'm going to say that Texas Tech has probably accomplished the least. I would have them at the bottom.
All right, John, thank you, man. Good to hear from you. Thanks for your time. Enjoy heck of a game, Arizona, K-State in Manhattan. And he said first time that ranked type, team that's been to Manhattan since 2014. And then RG3 and that team in 2011. John Kurtz, Kansas City Sports Network, with us on 365 Sports. Around the corner, Marc Daniels, voice of UCF Athletics, as UCF comes into the state of Texas to play TCU. And do we know much about TCU, or who is UCF? We've discussed all of them. And by the way, our pod today, a little bit later on in the show, will be Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, TCU, and Baylor. This is 365 Sports.
Samantha here with Texas Beef House, and welcome out. We are a family-owned and operated ranch here in East Texas. We sell Angus and Wagyu beef on bidonbeef.com. We've got a great auction coming up this Wednesday, September 11th. We've got a wide variety of filet, tomahawk, New York strips, ribeyes, roast, skirt steak, ground beef, hamburger patties, and sausage. Bidonbeef.com. Use code 365 Sports to get a discount today. Free shipping in the state of Texas, or you can qualify for free shipping of orders $300 or more. So go to bidonbeef.com and get registered today. Sell ends Thursday, September 12th around 6 p.m. Remember, we end in what's called a racehorse finish. So meaning in the last 2 minutes of bidding, if people are still bidding, that sale is going to stay open for 2 more minutes. So bidonbeef.com and use code 365 Sports.
At Genco, our goal is to build long-lasting relationships while providing complete financial solutions for each step of life's journey. Our members enjoy fewer fees, lower rates on loans of all types, and higher yields on a wide variety of savings options. That's just a small part of the credit union difference. Visit Genco online, on Facebook, or come by one of our 5 locations today. Apply online for membership. Genco FCU, NCUA Equal Housing Lender.
My money, my future, my credit union. Genco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
365 Sports around the corner. I'll look at 4 different teams in the Big 12 that and their games and who they are. And one of them at TCU, we'll look at that. They play, of course, UCF at home. Marc Daniels, our great friend. Good looking man. How you doing, Marc? Good to see you. Voice of UCF. How you been?
I'm great. I'm good. We're set for a big conference opening game. What could be better?
Yeah, I agree. Who is UCF at least through a couple of games this year?
Well, certainly a football team that can run the ball. You take into account the opponents UCF had played, an FCS team in New Hampshire. And then I think what's going to end up being a good CUSA team in Sam Houston. And, the Knights established the ability of running the football. They're averaging better than 400 yards a game on the ground. I would say this, and guys, I mentioned this on my show. You walk into one of those fancy ice cream shops, you get all these different flavors, all these toppings, and UCF really has kind of ordered vanilla the first couple of weeks. I don't think they've shown much by design from an offensive, even defensive standpoint. Maybe a few more toppings this week, but fundamentals, run the football, try to limit penalties defensively, make sure you tackle well, get some turnovers. They've done that through 2 games. They know they're stepping up in class now. But I think this year's version of UCF, they're a bigger team, a more physical football team. They hope to reduce the penalties and turnovers, and a team that certainly is going to utilize what appears to be 4 really good running backs.
Marc, TCU has been tested a little bit by Stanford. UCF, like you said, they've been very vanilla because they haven't really been tested yet, and they've been able to do that. What do you expect to see from that opening up the offense a little bit? Do we see a little bit more from KJ Jefferson, or do they still feel they need to kind of bring him along slowly as he gets more comfortable? He certainly looked better week 2 than week 1. For sure against Sam Houston than he did against New Hampshire. But where do you see his development right now and how they're going to use him against TCU?
Yeah, I think you'll see KJ be a little bit more involved passing-wise. Maybe UCF tries to go vertical a bit early in this game. Look, they're still trying to figure some things out. They lost Javon Baker, who was their best receiver last year. He's now with the Patriots. They've got a couple of skilled guys back there, Colby Hudson, Xavier Townsend, some other talented guys. Randy Pittman's a kind of a hybrid tight end, a guy that I think is going to help their passing game as he's a sophomore. But I think you'll see KJ be a little bit more of a passer here. But look, they're not going to get away from what they know is going to be a strength. A big offensive line, 4 running backs that they've utilized in the 2 games, and KJ Jefferson. So he'll be a run threat in this game. But clearly you'll see a little bit more offense. Look, the closest thing UCF did to opening something up the first 2 weeks was sending a receiver in motion. Otherwise, it was, here's the handoff. Can you stop it? And the opposition wasn't able to do that. Now, much more respect for TCU's defense, but you're not going to see UCF get away from trying to run the football. I've said this before. Gus's best offenses at Auburn were more heavy on the run. They were more like 65-35 run. UCF feels like they've got the backs to keep guys fresh and can that offensive line kind of wear down the opposition. But they know they have to throw the football at times. You want to avoid 3rd and long, but I think you'll see a little bit more KJ Jefferson in the pass game this week.
It's been interesting, Mark, to see how they've kind of divvied up the backs. You get R.J. Harvey early on, and then Penny Boone kind of comes in to close it with some Miles Montgomery in the middle, and you got some Ja'Cory Brown if he's in the game, and KJ, and it's just been really fascinating. But what kind of a start is R.J. Harvey off to in your estimation right now?
Well, he's been fantastic. He had 4 touchdowns last week. He's got 6 in the season. Watching him grow over the years, now his 3rd year as a running back at UCF. Now really a running back. He was a dual threat quarterback in high school, had to learn the running back position. Patient. As a quarterback, he tried to avoid getting hit. Here, he now knows he's going to get hit. He put on some weight, hasn't lost any speed. He's just a very smart player in film and then also on the field. Then you bring in a guy like a Penny Boone who ran for 1,400 yards at Toledo last year, 6'2", 240. Miles Montgomery has been fantastic for UCF coming from Cincinnati. Then Johnny Richardson might be the fastest guy on the team. They'll move Johnny in motion, some jet sweeps. So everybody's got a little bit of a niche here. Now, we'll see what happens in a close football game if UCF finds himself in that on Saturday, how they divvy up the carries. Do they go with 4 guys? Do they kind of, make it more simple with 2 guys? We've yet to see that happen, but they know they've got some options in that game, and so far so good. But RJ's been fantastic. We know the Big 12's got a lot of great running backs. RJ's among them, and I think he's set for another big season.
Yeah, I guess when they get into the clutch, like 4th quarter, 10 minutes left, they're either up 3 or down 3. Who's going to get those carries?
Oh, it's likely R.J. Harvey, but here's something else that UCF really didn't show much in game 1 and 2 is 2 backs. I mean, that's unheard of in college football most places, but I think you might see a little bit of that as we get into the Big 12 season. I think we did that maybe a combined 4 plays the first 2 games. You might see UCF using 2 backs, and it could be R.J. Harvey. It could be a big 6'2", 240 Penny Boone. It might be R.J. Harvey. You might see Johnny Richardson there. You also have seen in the first couple of games R.J. Harvey lining up in, as a quarterback. We call it wild night, whatever, but he's a quarterback. So they'll start to show a few more things in the run game where they've been kind of vanilla as well. So, but if you're asking me 4th down, you need that drives, clearly R.J. Harvey's earned the right to be that choice.
Mark Daniels, voice of UCF with his 365 Sports.
What have you seen? And look, this is the first Big 12 game of this year, but have you seen a different maybe approach, swagger, confidence now that the team, especially the guys who were there last year, have been through the Big 12 one time?
Yeah, look, guys, we talked a couple of times last year that UCF certainly was competitive in the conference, but they realized that, they needed to get bigger, had to get more physical. And I think that was a key a mission of Gus and his staff of the offseason. But they brought some guys back that understood, hey, we've got to get better in some areas. And from a fundamental standpoint, it was one of those camps that Gus really, I think, kind of raised his voice a bit. We've got to cut down on penalties. We've got to limit turnovers. Those things cost UCF probably 2, maybe 3 football games last year, but every team can talk about that. I think this year's team, like TCU, went out on the defensive side of the ball, kind of upgraded some areas. UCF is much better at linebacker, as is TCU at linebacker. I think UCF's back end got significantly better while bringing some guys back. And competition certainly helped. Quadric Bullett's a kid that's been at UCF for a number of years at safety. He was pushed a lot in spring and maybe at times was running with the twos. Well, that competition, I think, elevated his game the first 2 games of this season. So I think UCF is better talent-wise. I think they're more prepared from the physical standpoint of what to expect out of the Big 12. We'll see how their lines hold up. I think they're better there. But I think this team's got a better mental approach as it enters the league, a league they feel they have a better understanding of.
Has there been anything noticeably different just in terms of what the defense looks like with Ted Roof compared to previously? You mentioned some of the positions themselves, but what stands out to you through a couple of weeks?
Well, look, I think Ted may blitz a little bit more. I think they may feel like that they can cover on the outside or if they send corner blitzes. So I think you might see UCF gamble a little bit more. Last year, they were a bit hesitant because we struggled in one-on-one coverage. We struggled, against the run, a little bit of undersized safeties. But I think they feel like they've got some depth now and some kind of hybrid guys that can play multiple positions. Deshaun Pace was at Cincinnati kind of as that roving linebacker, at times nickel or safety. He's a linebacker, but athletically can cover guys. So I think you might see Ted gamble a little bit more. They feel like they can get pressure up front. Look, every team changes, a defensive coach, and they all say they're bigger and faster and stronger. But I think Ted feels like he's got more playmakers on defense now compared to what UCF had last year. So therefore, I think they feel comfortable if they want to gamble a time or two.
Mark Daniels with us. Mark, when and where what was your first job in broadcasting?
Oh, wow. In South Florida at 14 years old at a AM radio station ripping old AP wire copy.
I love that. That AP wire copy was special.
Off the ticker?
Yeah.
Off the ticker and the old paper, the long strands of paper that if you came in, if the newsroom closed at night at like midnight and somebody didn't come in until 5 a.m., there was just rows and rows and rows of paper. And guys like, look, Smokey, you're as old as me. And, in that era, you learned of the AP poll when that poll came out on the AP wire and you ripped it off and it was like, oh, wow, here's the AP poll. And you got a baseball update and they would send the sports out every, 15 minutes. That's how you did news back then, man.
Absolutely. I would come in for the weekend shift in Lufkin, Texas, and there would be like 27 trees worth of AP wire all curled up. And then I would go into a certain area and I would start, you'd start cutting them out. And this was weather, this was news. Friday night high school scores would come in with this massive list. That's how you got it. There was nothing else. That's how you got it.
I used to do a high school football show as well, and you literally would commercial break. You run all the way down the hall. You grab that long sheet of paper, you bring it back, and then, the audience thinks you got all the scores in front of you, and you're just kind of scrolling through. Here's this update. Here's that update. Or, as you know, back then, you called the newspaper and said, hey, can I get a couple of scores? That's how we did the high school football show back then.
Yep, absolutely.
When I first got into radio, my dad had a cousin. And we were at it like he was in his 70s. And they used to do, because you couldn't bounce things off like you do now or pick up syndication. So what people would do if they wanted to listen to baseball games, they would have a guy locally that was doing the game with sound effects behind him, reading the updates off the ticker. Wow. And so this guy was one of the producers, and he and the other guy would go back and forth to the barbershop around the corner and bet guys like, hey, I bet you Joe DiMaggio hits a single here. And they're all right. And so everyone put their money in, and they just cleaned people out because they would tell them hey, I mean, we're just good. We're just good.
There was always
to do it. First high school football game I broadcast was on a local cable outlet when I was a student at the University of Florida. We did a high school football game at a small school right outside of Ocala, Florida. I remember showing up and I said, does anybody have the rosters? And they looked at me like, no. And they go, how are we supposed to know? They go, good luck. And in the first game I did, I had 10 names on one team, maybe 4 on the others. And that's just how you did it back then, man.
That's exactly right. It's unbelievable. I literally, I'll never forget. Sometimes when you heard that ding, 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 it was either weather or it was a major, major story that was coming down the AP wire.
Yep, those were the days, man.
Have you ever done a game at Amon Carter?
No. UCF played Basketball at TCU, we've not gone there for baseball. I did see the stadium. We were there for basketball last year. I know it's a fantastic stadium. Capacity-wise, very similar to UCF at 45,000. So, and I know they got a blackout, family weekend, sold out, night games. It's going to be great weather. We're excited. It's going to be a great environment. And guys, when you open the season with a couple of games like both these teams did, and you go, okay, now here's a game that is going to be a battle, it kind of elevates everybody's level of excitement.
Yeah, and we've heard Gus Malzahn. You brought this up, year 2, and they're more accustomed to it. It's like for you too, right? As a broadcaster, with all the teams that you've gotten to know the last 12 or 14 months.
Yeah, and the interesting thing though, guys, we only played 2 teams that we played last year. We've got schools that we didn't play last year. We got the 4 new schools this year, all 4 of them. So we don't have many repeat teams from last year. So we'll go to Iowa State for the first time ever.
Yep.
UCF did play at Arizona State many years ago, but now the first time as a conference team. Utah, BYU, Arizona, Colorado all come to us this season.
I saw that. And what a nice stretch. First of all, the Big 12 on the road at TCU, Colorado at home, which will get a lot. And, of course, they need to turn their stuff around. And then, without looking ahead, the game in Gainesville, your alma mater, Florida, and you do the game for UCF. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's funny. You graduate a place and people think, well, gosh, you've been back so many times. But, I graduated in 1988. I started broadcasting UCF games in 95. I've gone to 2 football games since I graduated simply because I work on weekends, and I've called games there a couple of times. I called basketball, baseball games there. And I think we talked before, we'll see what happens with both teams the next few weeks. It could be a very interesting scenario. I do think UCF fans feel, and UCF beat Florida a couple of years ago in the bowl game, but to go to Gainesville feeling as if, hey, you've got a chance to certainly compete and win the game. It's a different environment than years ago when we went there. But we'll worry about that. Right now, UCF focused on what they know is a really tough and exciting opportunity against TCU on Saturday.
No question.
Look, UCF could be the team that sends Billy Napier off to the buyout. So if things don't get better in Gainesville real fast, if they lose to A&M at home this week, that's 2 home losses out of their first 3 games. That's not going to go well,
guys. That's an hour-by-hour story in the state. Everyone's got their sources. Everybody knows about a buyout. Everybody knows about this. Everybody knows the list of candidates, and it's a bit crazy. It's a bit unfair to some degree. And you guys know this, and UCF will deal with Florida when they get there. If the freshman quarterback has a great game on Saturday, then you like the coach a little bit more.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's a great game the next week. And I played a clip on my show, guys, a couple of days ago when Jimmy Chitwood walked into the church when they were kind of voting if Coach Dale was going to stay or not. He said, I think it's time to play ball. They all cheered and said, I told you we got rid of that coach. And then Chitwood goes, I play, coach stays. He goes, I go. And then they re-voted to keep the coach.
That's
you might be seeing that at Florida right now to some degree.
Yeah, with Lagway, no question. Mark, great to see you. Have fun in Fort Worth. Enjoy it. I know you will. Thanks for your time as always.
Anytime, guys. Talk to you again soon.
Mark Daniels, the voice of UCF Athletics, 30 years strong, with us on many things that Gus Malzahn and the football team, after a couple of wins to start the year and now on the road against TCU.
I think it's and I say this sincerely, it's ridiculous that everybody is already transferring DJ Lagway out of Florida when he's only played 1 game there. You don't know what's going to happen. And 2, he went there knowing that they weren't that good yet.
Yeah.
It's not like he showed up and it's like, oh, you guys stink.
I think
what
now,
happened?
I don't know if Lagway's not really he's the story. I think most people are transferring Billy Napier out before they get the Lagway.
I see that, I saw a thing come across my Twitter timeline of 5 realistic places for DJ Lagway to transfer to. And I'm like, it's not like he transferred there when they're 11-1, had coming off a great season. He signed there and their national championship caliber. He went there knowing the state that they're in. He knew that. It's not news to him. He's not an idiot. So why would he do that if he wasn't at least in for the fight a little bit?
Yeah, I just think you want him to leave.
I mean, I think he's going to be very, very good.
Yeah.
So yes, he does make me nervous, but you know.
Well, there's a long way to go on that, but we'll see what happens with Florida, Napier, and Lagway threw that 400 and some yards in his opening game, a debut game. It was a school record. That was obviously very impressive. Is it enough? Who knows? All right, when we come back, we're going to look at the Big 12. Our pod is Pod 1. Rotate them 4 different pods every week, and we just kind of start them differently. Today, we'll get to Tech, TCU. We'll get to Oklahoma State, Baylor, all of that. Hope you're having a great day. We are here tonight until 6 o'clock, 365 Sports around the corner. Also, Zach Gell will join us, national talk show host, and what he has on his plate. And we've already sent him a few of the games that we're going to talk about as, of course, we head into that. This is 365 Sports. TexasBeefHouse.com. They're doing it again. An auction that started today. You just heard from Samantha just a minute ago. Samantha Duvall, the Duvall family, her father, mother, and brother, Tyler, a part of a company, TexasBeefHouse.com, that have done an amazing job right outside of Tyler, Texas. And they have the new auction that started today, will run until it ends around 6 o'clock tomorrow. And, of course, it can be extended a little bit if people start to, bid at the very last second. And so there we are with that. And on top of that, if you go to Bid on Beef, they will tell you what is actually on or in this specific, I guess you could say, auction, which they've had. It's hard to imagine what they have when it comes to Wagyu beef, Angus cattle, Wagyu beef, premium quality Angus, Wagyu beef online. That is what's great about TexasBeefHouse.com. So you want to get involved? You want to get involved with what they have? You can do that by going to TexasBeefHouse.com and then BidOnBeef.com. And they also will tell you what's available. Steak, Wagyu, Angus, Bid on Beef, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Get ready, Baylor fans. The ultimate game weekend experience awaits you at the Baylor Club. Kick off your weekend with our Friday Night Live pep rally. With live entertainment and special appearances from the Baylor Spirit Squad, it's the perfect way to start your game weekend with a roar. On Saturdays, don't miss our Knox Hall tailgate. Enjoy delicious food, ice-cold drinks, and great company as you gear up for the big game. And after the weekend's excitement, wrap it all up with our famous Bear brunches on Sundays. Don't wait. Make your game weekends legendary with the Baylor Club membership today.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
The pod includes Tech, TCU, Oklahoma State, and Baylor. Let's start with Oklahoma State. We kind of try to switch around the pods whenever we can. Oklahoma State, of course, with the rally to beat Arkansas, and then the craziness in overtime on the road against Tulsa. The game 11 o'clock Saturday. Oklahoma State in the top 15, and they'll play on the road against Tulsa right around the corner.
Yeah, I think this should be an okay one for Oklahoma State. I don't know what Tulsa's bringing, but they've got to fix their defense. No Colin Oliver. They got gashed by Arkansas badly. Oklahoma State did really badly. And Tulsa, obviously not going to be Arkansas, but they have to fix that defense. And I don't think it's going to be one of those games where Ollie Gordon's not, a factor until later, but they fell behind by so much early against Arkansas that they kind of went away from him for a bit. And Arkansas did a really good job of shutting him down until the end of the game. So I think this should be a good get back on track game, but I don't think this is going to be a fix all your problems week for them.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma State fans who were claiming the disrespect card all offseason have been a little bit quieter as of late because it's not as clear as it was in the offseason when everything was just, on paper that they are the best team in the Big 12. I think it's very much in doubt that they are, but the good news for them is that that's in doubt for pretty much everybody not named Utah with a healthy Cam Rising. And even then, they're not unbeatable. Oklahoma State still got everything in front of them. They won a game they should have lost. And you can, if you really want to be like super homer and say, well, no, like they should have lost that game. Like we can break it down however you want to. They should have lost that game. They're down 14-0. They were down 21-7 at half. And they made a great rally in the second half. And there were some plays like on the part of Arkansas that wasn't really Oklahoma State making the play as much as it was Arkansas not making the play that cost them dearly. And so I think you're grateful that you got that win. You're grateful that you got that win at home. You're grateful you got a win over an SEC team. And now you move on and you should play a team that will not give you nearly as many problems, but will give you one final good little run before you get into Big 12 play and give you an opportunity to correct some of the things that need to sharpen, like your run game, like your defense. Those two things have not been as good as what you've expected. Colin Oliver getting hurt certainly doesn't help the defensive side of things. So it's all fine. It's just that I think last week was a bit more of a scare. And on the other side of it, you're going, okay, we won, but man, we got to fix some things or we're going to lose some games here. We're not going to be able to do this every week.
We won't get specific, but Mike Gundy was asked in this week's press conference about they had receivers, Arkansas, running free most of the game. And he was asked about, well, it didn't look really all that bad when I went back and looked at it. And it's our good friend Robert Allen, and Mike Gundy blistered him. No, they were running free. Gundy with truth serum, right? Hey, listen, we're not going to BS in this press conference. Some coaches do, but they got to fix that. They do. They have to fix it, and they will be on the road against Tulsa to try to get to 3-0 on the year. The Big 12 has a bunch of teams at 2-0. Some of them haven't played anybody, but Oklahoma State did play Arkansas. We have discussed, Texas Tech. The loss to Washington State was one-sided. They were bludgeoned on the ground. They were very fortunate against Abilene Christian. Now Texas Tech will be at home, back at home with a nervous crowd, I would think, with North Texas and Eric Morris, a former Texas Tech receiver, coming to town with what they do at the Mean Green.
Tech is a 9.5-point favorite in this game, and good for them. But they're facing a 2-0 team in North Texas. Now, look, they beaten South Alabama and SFA, so it's not like they played on that level. But Chandler Morris so far in Eric Morris's offense, pretty good. He's been confident. He's been slinging the ball around, and Tech has shown the capacity not to be able to stop people. So, yeah, this should be nerve-wracking. Now, Tech should win this game. Should's a big word. They should have not let Abilene Christian score 51 points. I don't know if they should have or shouldn't have won against Washington State, but they didn't. And then here they're in a situation where they've got another high-flying offense, and I don't know if their defensive issues have been fixed in a week.
No, they shouldn't have won that game against Washington State.
Exactly.
They were nowhere close to winning
but before going in,
it's a matter of like what you felt about Washington State. Going on the road late night, like that's always going to be dicey if you're not a blue blood type of a team that you're just expected to win every game. So for Tech being like a lot of the Big 12 just kind of right there in the middle, that was always a game that you maybe didn't predict a loss, but you thought like, okay, that could get dicey depending on how good Washington State is. And turns out Washington State's pretty good. And so, yeah, it became a big problem for them. I don't think they were ever much in that game. And that was what was alarming. Was it's one thing to go out and lose on the road. It's another thing to go out and kind of get beat as one-sided as they did, giving up nearly 200 yards on the ground to the quarterback and John Mateer, and just not looking that great in a lot of phases. It's a bit of a mess. I don't know that it can be cleaned up. I don't think that Micah Hudson's the magic repairman that's going to come in and all of a sudden you give him 10 targets, and because he was a 5-star in high school, he's going to lead you to victory. Clearly something's not quite right there in terms of him being ready or doing the things that he needs to do. I don't know, but I know it's going to become a really annoying thing if they keep playing kind of middle of the road football and he's not playing in every press conference. Joey McGuire's got to answer questions about Micah Hudson. So I'm interested to see if he does get more involved this week, but regardless, they've just got to play better. And this is a game that's in so many, it's a must win. Like it is, it's a must win. You're at home, you're 1-1. And you don't know how many games, based on what we've seen, you're going to win in Big 12 play. So I think it's very important to be 2-1 after this one for a multitude of reasons, including just the faith of your fan base, because you lose this game and you talk about hot seat. Joey McGuire's fine for the time being. Like, I don't think he's in danger right now, but that's the type of like stuff that adds up to then get you in danger, like a Marcus Freeman, right? It wasn't just a Northern Illinois. It's that Northern Illinois was a symptom, or it was another evidence of a symptom of it not quite going where it needs to go. So I think you've had a couple of examples along the Joey McGuire ride so far of you're like, man, we all believe in him. We support him, but like they got to be better in this area. And this is a game where you lose this one and like a lot of that faith's going to be lost. So this is an important one that you probably didn't bank on being all that important when the schedule was released.
They have 3 games in a row at home: North Texas, Arizona State, Cincinnati. When you could look at that and go, okay, that should be a nice opportunity to get off to a great start. Right now, they just need to worry about this Saturday. Then they're on the road against Arizona and then back home against Baylor. So, and then they, back-to-back road games. So all those teams you listed. You can get very sensitive here if this doesn't go well. I think they'll be fine this week. But with Brooks kind of, who knows? I think North Texas gives them a little tussle early on. We'll see how they can do, whether they can extend that in the second half.
Well, the defense isn't very good. So, North Texas should be able to move the football. And if not, that's great news. But I anticipate that they will be able to do a little bit of damage against that Tech defense. To what extent, obviously, will be a story of that game, as will, is Taj Brooks playing or not? I tried to find an update, and I haven't seen anything unless I'm just not seeing it that has indicated his status for this week. But obviously that's huge. If he plays, they're a totally different team because they lean on him so much, and not having him last week really exposed what they are without him. And I think that game goes differently if he's playing in it. I don't know that they win it, but I do think the game goes a little bit differently. So that's a really important key is whether Taj Brooks is back for them or not. But they should absolutely win this game. If not, then like I said, that's a big old mark on the Joey McGuire resume that is going to come back to haunt him or be more fuel to the fire that's starting to simmer a little bit because you're not quite meeting expectations in year 3. So this is it's an interesting time for the program.
They always start poorly. I say poorly. They always start a little bit ragged and then they end quickly. They end very well, but you can dig yourself a hole that you can't dig out at some point at the end of the year if you don't start winning out early.
Yeah. And right now it feels that they're in the start winning. If he wants to keep the coaching staff together the way that it is, they've got to start winning. Otherwise, he's not.
It's not him as much as it is like Zach Kitley or whatever.
It's not him, but they're going to say like, okay, well, you got to make some staff changes because this isn't working, and so that's what the next thing up for Joey is.
That's what happened. Then you look around and you've like Aranda have replaced several coordinators, and then eventually you have to look in the mirror. All right, TCU at home against UCF. I guess based on some games that were close or whatever, and that game with Stanford and TCU was such a late game a couple of weeks ago that I kind of wait. No, they did. They came back and they played really well down the stretch to win the game. TCU at 2-0, hosting UCF. We just had Mark Daniels on. They're 2-0. I look forward to this one. I think this is going to be a fun game.
Yeah, I think this is the most interesting. Maybe tied with the Wildcat,
no, Kansas
game.
State, Arizona is the headline game.
It's the headline. This one's close, though, because you've got two teams that are kind of in on similar trajectories here and should be a really good game. I think they're very evenly matched. Josh Hoover looks like he's everything that Sonny Dykes said is going to be. And, then you got KJ Jefferson. Maybe we're going to see more like we just heard from Marc. So, yeah, I think this one's pretty interesting. And I'm looking forward to watching this one. I think, night game, first time UCF's played there. Big deal. I know a bunch of UCF fans are going. I think it'll be a good deal.
I think TCU is maybe one of the better teams in the league, and we'll figure that out this week. Or whoever wins this game, I think will find themselves moving up a spot or two in the big picture rankings. But I do like TCU here. I just think they're a more complete team, and I'm very interested to see how that defense goes against that UCF rushing attack. Look, there's a big key here. Kendall Briles, the offensive coordinator, coached KJ Jefferson to the best football he's played in his college career. So TCU has a pretty keen insight on what KJ Jefferson can do because their OC was hands-on with him for a couple of seasons. And so I think that gives TCU a slight advantage of just having that sort of intel and kind of knowing what he can and cannot do. And plus the tape has shown that these first couple of weeks. So I'm sure that they'll have a great game plan. And I think I like their overall balance, and plus being at home at night, I think is another little inch you give to TCU here. But I mean, who knows if they can't stop the run well enough, or KJ Jefferson goes off inspired by the fact that he's playing in front of his old OC or whatever the case may be. Like, it's not impossible for UCF to go in there and get a win. I do think this is a really intriguing game though, because they're not two teams we've seen matched up. So it's something new and unique. And given where the Big 12 is right now, I mean, who the hell knows any given Saturday, but I do like TCU here to keep the ball rolling. And I think they're one of the better teams in the league right now, but I don't know how high to place them just yet.
All right. After UCF, they have back-to-back games on the road against SMU, who's not quite who we thought, but that's a nice little intense rivalry. Then they play at Kansas, and who knows who they are after the loss they had this past week. And can Jalen Daniels and company get it all back together as one? And then finally, the Baylor Air Force game. We've chewed on this quite a bit since Monday. Obviously, Air Force with, as even Taylor McCarg said, a very young, raw team. Baylor has a handful of guys that were a part of that ass-kicking when they lost in Fort Worth in like minus 20-degree temperatures. Baylor at home in that game. Look forward to it. I look forward to the pageantry, the atmosphere of this weekend, but it appears as if Baylor should be fine if they don't start off with three and out, punt, that kind of thing, which they've been known to do in the last year and a half. All right, when we come back, we're going to hear from Zach Gelb and a lot of college games that we'll get into. Also, Zach's the one that reached out to Matt Rule about him never joining this show again until we go to Lincoln. We have news on that. And then we hear from Grant Taff on the 50th anniversary of the 1974 Southwest Conference Championship game team and Paul's top five. And this is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Ted Teague, General Manager, Loop 340 and east of Highway 84 in Waco, and more discounts and specials that are now out there from Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Ted sent me a bunch of new opportunities, including, of course, Ram trucks. Speaks for themselves. The brand of Ram trucks, Jeep, speaks for themselves. The Wagoneer, I don't know if you've seen them or you've driven in one or you've driven one. The Wagoneer is a very special vehicle, and it has all of what seemed like you're driving, one of the ultimate, if not the ultimate SUV, but much more than that. And on top of that, they have 400 plus cars on the lot because they always have a lot for you, whether you want a pre-owned car or a new car. Great salespeople. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at Baylor.edu/alumni.
Midway Athletics and UBO Business Services are two names that exude winning. From Midway's top Central Texas star test scores to college-like extracurricular facilities and UBO Business Services industry-leading customer service scores, you can trust in these two winning programs. Best of luck to Coach Joe Gillespie and the Midway Panthers. And look at your sticker on your office equipment. If it does not say UBO, call Midway Class of 2020, Duff, Daxon, Dane, or Sean Hunt at 254-709-2101 or ubeo.com.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely. And I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry, go through your wife's jewelry box, go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. This segment is brought to you by Busch Light, the sound of refreshment. The coldest and smoothest light lager there is. Find Busch Light near you.
Zach Gelb, Infinity Sports Network, national talk show host, joins us. Good to see that big smile. Zach Gelb joins us on 365 Sports. So, Zach, we have breaking news. You convinced Matt Rule not to ever do another segment with us because I had never been to Lincoln. We are going next week. Craig, Jennifer, Daniel, and I are headed to Lincoln next Friday to go watch them against Illinois.
So I bullied you pretty much.
Yeah, no, you did. You shamed me. You shamed me.
Okay, I have a recommendation. You have to go to Casa Bovita, which is the steakhouse out there.
Okay.
Matt will hook it up and we'll get your reservation because it's not easy to get to. And then when you're at the stadium, I know that Smoak, you're a little bit older, so I don't know how you are with the taking photos when you're in the stands. I need a photo of a runza because a runza is one of the greatest things I've ever had for football drunk food.
What is an Arunza? I've seen Nebraska fans or those who cover the games actually bring that up. What actually is it?
There's like just beef inside of it, and there's like bread. Like it kind of tastes like a hot pocket. So it's nothing like crazy. It's not bougie, but I had a few Runzas when I was out there.
All right. There we go.
Yeah, I think I heard Tim Waltz talking about it, and because he's from Nebraska, and I was like, I don't know what that is at all. Your thoughts on Nebraska's absolute utter domination of Colorado and where this puts Coach Prime and his tenure there. It makes this whole thing seem a lot weirder that they are not any better than they were last year after all change of the roster and everything. And Nebraska really stuck it to them.
Yeah, so Matt Rule is building a team, and I like Coach Prime, but Dion has not built a team there. They have individuals with Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, who are great. You have a few other good players, but they have not built a team, and they are building a program based off getting a ton of attention, where Nebraska is building a team that's going to be really damn good this year. So that was my takeaway. I thought Nebraska was going to win the game, but I thought this was going to be a fun back and forth game where Nebraska would pull away late. That game was over at halftime. Nebraska didn't even need to show up in the second half. And I just had Josh Pate on my show today. Does a great job for CBS covering college football. We know the #1 college football podcast. And he doesn't think Dion's going to be back at Colorado. It's not because Colorado is going to fire him, but he thinks there's a chance that Dion leaves at the end of the year because of the lack of team he's built. And then he even threw out a theory that because Arkansas is going to open up, Gus Malzahn goes back to the SEC, takes the Arkansas job, and then you could view a spot like UCF being a perfect landing spot for Coach Prime to then bolt to.
Yeah, man, there's a lot of speculation right now on whether this is the last run or not. These last 10 games for Deion. It's going to be very, very interesting. I saw where you had the coach from Northern Illinois on your show. What an upset that was. We talked to him as well, and they're obviously getting their flowers, and deservedly so. What'd you make of that upset last week, and what that means for the Irish as much as anything?
Yeah, I didn't love Notre Dame in terms of like doing damage in the college football playoff this year. I thought they would just get in because that's the system now with the 12-team format, where there's going to be a lot of teams that we're praising at the end of the year, but they've really just been the same team that they've been for the last few years. It's just more invites are now going to the party. I look back, and I may have said it with you guys last week, after the A&M game, I thought that was more of an indictment on A&M and A&M being overrated heading into this season, rather than this was some spectacular, great victory for Notre Dame, which it was a good victory, but I didn't walk away from that game being thoroughly impressed with the Fighting Irish. Now, with that being said, I would have never predicted in a million years that they would have lost to NIU or that game would have even been a contest, but it's a brutal look for Marcus Freeman, who lost to Marshall in year one. You lose to Marshall in year one, okay, bad losses happen in year one for a head coach when you're trying to build your own style on a program that's been in a good spot when Brian Kelly was there. But for that to happen in year three, it's unacceptable. It's embarrassing. And now also you kind of look at Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame differently, and you wonder what direction are they heading to? And they clearly just overlooked an opponent, and you had an emotional high and then an all-time dud the following week.
Zach Gelb with us. Again, college football. What were your thoughts about Texas in Ann Arbor? All of us discussed that we thought that Texas was going to be too much. A very dominant win for Steve Sarkisian.
I thought Texas was going to win the game. I didn't think it was going to be a big-time blowout, but no one really thought Michigan was going to win. That is Texas showing right now they're the second best team in the country. Georgia is the best team in the country and the preeminent team in the country. I know they play coming up in the middle of October, and that's going to be on paper right now the game of the year in college football. But it's crazy what Sark has done. I know we always joked with Sam Ehlinger and Texas, we're back. But last year, they get to the college football playoff. And here's the craziest part for Texas. I know we've seen Arch Manning a little bit, but Arch Manning hasn't even been the starter yet. And Quinn Ewers has done wonders with Texas. And I always thought Texas wasn't really going to get humming until you saw Arch Manning take over. And I thought they were going to win the Big 12 last year. But right now, this is a program that's humming, and they're clicking on all cylinders. And that was a championship performance that they put on display, where we knew they were better than Michigan, but to just bludgeon Michigan and not even make that a game is something that what championship teams really aspire and do.
Zach, A&M goes and plays at Florida this week. Billy Napier is under fire like no other coach in the country. Now, DJ Lagway made his debut against Samford last week. Billy Napier says he plans to use Mertz and Lagway when Mertz is out of the protocol, which seems like he's being loyal to Graham Mertz. But does he not need to be loyal to the Gators right now and say, like, look, if Lagway, he threw for 400 yards against Samford. If he throws for 250 against the A&M defense, is pretty darn good. Like, doesn't that mean you got to leave him in for the rest of the time?
I would agree with you. And Billy Napier shouldn't try to be loyal to anybody, because if he is, all I will say is look at Lincoln Riley last year. He was loyal to Grinch. Everyone knew that shouldn't happen for the start of the season, and it cost him. Now, it's not going to cost Lincoln Riley his job. USC has turned it around this year. But in terms of Billy Napier, I would be shocked, absolutely shocked at the end of the year if Billy Napier makes it through the season. I think he'll actually be fired before the end of the season, right towards the end of the season. And then, right, there's going to be a ton of names that we speculate from that job. So I would not have any past loyalties playing a factor in that decision.
What do you think of how this season has begun? 6 of the 7 teams in the top 25 are SEC. There might be 1 or 2 that are in there because of the fumes of being a part of the SEC, and also from what they did a year ago. Do you feel like that's going to just be the common theme this year, or will that eventually be broken up?
I think in most years, when you look at the 12 teams in the college football playoff, so obviously there's 5 spots reserved for the conference champions. I think for the other 7 spots, in most years, it's going to be 3 out of those 7 to the Big Ten, 3 out of those 7 also going to the SEC for the Final Seven. That last spot reserved for Notre Dame. Now Notre Dame may not make the college football playoff this year because I don't even know how to evaluate Notre Dame after they've lost to NIU. But I think the bigger point here is, sure, for like the little guy, all right, now you get a spot into the college football playoff. The ACC, they're not sending 2 teams this year. I think the Big 12 is a really good conference, and I think the Big 12 is better than the ACC, but I don't think 2 Big 12 teams are going to get in. The only way that happens is if, let's just say, there's like a Big 12 team like TCU from a few years ago that loses in their conference championship game, and then you're going to then put that winner of the Big 12 championship in and probably still find the spot for TCU. So that could happen where you get 2 teams from either the Big 12 or the ACC in a 12-team format. But I think there's a bigger point here. There's not a lot of teams that I feel like can win a national championship. So we've expanded to 12 teams, but I still feel like it's the same of the last few years where you only look at it and be like, okay, 4 to 6 teams max you feel can actually win a national championship, if that.
Yeah, Zach, I think we're probably 5 years away from seeing any kind of parity that drips down enough to where it's more than that, where you have teams that, are maybe the second team of the Big 12 or the ACC, if that even is the same way in 5 years, that are capable of winning those national championships outside of, oh my God, somebody beat Georgia. Like, how did that happen? And then the whole thing opens up.
No, yeah, it's definitely a fair point. And also, let's be real, guys, it's inevitable. When you go from 4 to 12, that means since they made that drastic of a jump already, in future years, and it's already been discussed, they're going to go to more and more teams. And that will then open up a spot for some of these other conferences that aren't the Big Ten of the SEC to feel like, okay, in most years we could get 2 teams in from the ACC and 2 teams in from the Big 12, depending on whatever number they expand to.
Memphis and Florida State. We know where Florida State is. Maybe we don't. Memphis is pretty good, Zach. Yeah. They are a nice football team, and boy, Mike Norvell and company, they just need to win a game.
Yeah, and Mike Norvell obviously used to coach at Memphis. Hey, it goes without being said, this is a must-win game for Florida State. But it feels like for this year, the Florida State program is broken. So can they win? Yes. Am I going to sit here and tell you they're definitely going to win? No, I'm not, because Memphis has the look of that team that could be a conference champion to get into the college football playoff for that 5th conference championship spot. Boise State also had a good showing up against Oregon, where quite frankly, they probably should have won the game. And then you look at Liberty's schedule, it sets up favorably for Liberty as well.
Zach, thank you very much. Thank you so much. We'll get into the NFL a little bit with you next week, but also always college football with you on Wednesdays. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, anytime, guys. Thank you.
Zach Gelb with us again on the Infinity Sports Network on many things college football. And Paul, you nervous about Memphis?
Yeah, I was nervous about Memphis when I thought MSU didn't suck ass. So, yeah, I mean, like when I thought they were good, I was like, yeah, that's a trap game. So I was less nervous about Georgia Tech and Boston College, really about Boston College. And then Memphis was the one of the first 3 I was more nervous about. But, yeah, no, when Florida State showed that they're not very good, then, I mean, yeah, I'm very nervous about it.
If they lose to Memphis, do you watch every game the rest of the year?
No, I mean, like I'll pick and choose. I'll watch Miami, I'll watch Clemson, I'll watch Florida. If I'm at home, I'll watch a game, but I'm not gonna make an appointment viewing like last year I did.
So you won't go to SMU?
I'll go to SMU.
Okay,
I'm gonna go. I mean, like that's gonna be fun no matter what. Just being able to be a fan for a second, or I might take Rick Hart up on his offer to just go sit in the suite and cheer for SMU. I don't know.
With an SMU cap on.
That's fine. I mean, I won't feel like I feel like they betrayed me by not being good when I'm going to see them. Right. So, they owe me because I haven't seen them with my own eyes since 2014, like in person.
Yeah, no,
I saw that was the first game of the year. They barely beat Oklahoma State. And
what was the game? Did you go to the game in Norman?
That was before.
Okay.
But this was the one at AT&T Stadium after they're defending national champions. They brought almost everybody back, but a couple guys. And then they went out, and that was the first game of that year where they kept coming back and winning games all year long. And then they finally lost to Oregon when, they played a team that that wasn't crappy.
I wonder how many fans that when your team goes south, especially if expectations are pretty good, do you not so much you keep up with them, but do you lose interest to where you don't even watch them? You don't like set up your day to watch a game at 2:30 or at 6 or at 11 o'clock. Garrett's over there shaking his head.
I do it often.
One of my college roommates, Rusty, who I think you met at the wedding, Rusty, he used to like the Willie Taggart era broke him, and he lives in Idaho. And if they're not up to snuff, like he likes to camp and fish and all that stuff because it's beautiful out there. But if he doesn't think they're going to be very good, now he's just like, well, I'm not going to stress myself out. I'm going to go to the woods where they can't hurt me.
Yeah.
And that's what he does. I promise you that's what he's doing this weekend.
All right. When we come back this weekend, Baylor Air Force, Baylor is going to celebrate that 50th anniversary of the miracle on the Brazos in the 1974 Southwest Conference Championship. And Grant Tapp, when that news came out earlier this year, and it wasn't that long ago, we were fortunate enough to be able to line up an interview with him. We'll have that, what it means to Coach Tapp, to the program, and the surroundings of that game, and some of the thoughts that maybe there wasn't going to be football if they didn't at least start to turn the table or turn the corner. And this is 365 Sports. Ideal. MRI.com in the Central Texas marketplace. They have state-of-the-art imaging. I've been in it, and most recently in it, because I need to find out. I don't need to rule anything out. I need to find out what in the heck is causing my right hip to constantly be throbbing. Some days better than others. I'm tired of it, in other words. And maybe you are too with something that's bothering you. Get your doctor to call Ideal MRI or have them at least get in touch with them to offer at least get an appointment to get an MRI. I'm fed up with it. I am. I'm tired of this kind of feeling, whether it's before I play golf or after I play golf or after I walk or when I wake up. I'm sick of it. And so I have the images. Dr. Ackley is going to look at them and help me. What is next? Dr. Ackley and, of course, his staff at Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine. But I get my MRIs at Ideal MRI, $497 or less every single time.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses. When it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Is your car ready for a makeover? Get ready to fall in love with your ride again at City Tire and Battery. City Tire and Battery is family owned and has provided expert service with top quality products since 1942. And with financing available, there's no reason to put off those much needed upgrades. Give your car the love it deserves and go see City Tire and Battery, located at 1502 South Valley Mills in Waco.
When we moved to Texas, we were like fish out of water. We didn't know anyone in our neighborhood until our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent came to the house. She was so helpful and reassuring, a friendly face with that Texan hospitality I'd heard about. When we purchased a Texas Farm Bureau insurance policy, we knew we were making the right choice. We knew our family would be protected.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is brought to you by Edward Jones and financial advisor Cam Heathcott. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Always great to hear your voice. And I wanted to, the announcement that came out today by Baylor that they were going to honor the 74 team, the Miracle in the Brazos, the Southwest Conference title. And the very first thing I thought about, well, besides that's fantastic, 50 years ago, is also just to get a quick reaction from you on what that means to you and what you think it means to the team that did that.
Well, I thank you, Smoak. You're one of my favorites. I think you know that. And for you to write about this amazing story is very pleasing to me. So I'm here available. Answer any questions you've got.
It would
now,
be, yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say it's an open door. You just ask it and I'll answer it.
So besides the win and besides what that year meant, is there anything else that stands out about that team besides 100 things that maybe has never been told or something you would like to share?
Well, I think one of the things that was sort of interesting is that it became, through the media, the Miracle on the Brazos. And we, as a coaching staff and a football team, and those that were involved with the team, never thought of it as a miracle, but that was the catchy thing for the media, and that's sort of how it went down. But it was planned, it was developed, it was executed by a coaching staff and a football team that took on the moniker that sort of went nationwide, is that they believed that they could beat Texas. And then they did it. But in order to do it, they had to have the proper plan and execute that plan. And so, it seems simple when you talk about it and everybody say, oh, well, it was a big miracle. Well, it was a planned miracle, if you want to put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it wasn't easy. That year started out, you played number one OU. That's the team when Switzer had those great teams at OU. He had a bunch of them. Missouri, you lost on the road at Missouri, so you had back-to-back. Then you beat Oklahoma State, won at Florida State in that memorable finish, won at Arkansas, so you gained some momentum, lost it to A&M. But that's just looking at the name. Eventually, Texas and Texas Tech also ranked. Looking at that schedule in itself was amazing, or is amazing.
Yes, it was a road killer is what it was. And, we survived it and came out of it with a lot of confidence. And also that was, I think, very important as we went into the conference. And when we played University of Texas, that particular football team had no fear. They had been up against some of the best in the nation. They knew that they could compete and win against the top people. So it was, I never resented the Miracle on the Brazos, because I understood that it was a miracle to most people, the high percentage of the people. So I never resented that, but it was a planned and an executed plan by a group of young men that believed that they could do it. And there's been a lot said and made about the concept of I believe, which I wrote a book about it. But that was the real key, to tell you the truth, because Texas had been dominant over the years. And here comes Baylor, who had been the bottom of everything, now comes up against the top team in the conference and have played like they believed they could win, and then they did win.
Why that team? Why did you mentioned it was planned, and we mentioned the schedule was just brutal. I mean, it kind of opens up your eyes. You never dodged people. You played anybody, anywhere, pretty much any time. Kind of during that time, the tough.
That was kind of the swagger we had. Line them up, we'll play them.
and you did.
And it was very good for our football team because we had been against some really good football teams, and of course Texas was the best in our league. And so coming into that, our football team and our coaching staff had no fear at all because we had competed against really good football teams. We had showed that we could win, and why not against the University of Texas? And so that's how we went into the game, with the mentality that, hey, this is just a game that's in our conference, and we're as good or better than they are, and we'll have to prove it on the football field. And we did.
24-7 at halftime. What changed?
Well, Smoak, that's, I think, the question that most football folks want to know all the time. What changed? Well, okay. Yeah. Well, Donnell just mentioned Neil Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Neil was stuttering quarterback that certainly wasn't a national known or ranked guy, became a quarterback, but he had one of the most important aspects of human relations. And that was he was an humble executor. He quietly would go into a game or into a huddle. He exuded confidence, and then he performed it. And he was kind of an unlikely type kid to do that, in the sense that he wasn't fast, he wasn't strong, he wasn't that big, and he was a winner. That's the big thing. He was a winner and suited that.
And he scored the first touchdown to kind of start this comeback in that third quarter.
Yes, he did. Yeah, and it was a game when you sit back and look at it, it was a classic game of supposed. We never thought of ourselves as underdogs, but the media did. And so here's the classic case of an underdog rising to the occasion and successfully executing a plan that had been worked on and actually worked when we put it into effect. And so it was one of those really amazing things to be a part of. And people still talk about it. People that were there, people that said they were there, talk about it all the time. So it was a great game, and a very important game for our program and where we were trying to take back at the time.
You beat a team with Earl Campbell, Roosevelt Leaks, Raymond Claiborne, and others who were on it. And because Texas was always loaded, and yet you were able to beat a team with guys who are now in the College Football Hall of Fame. And we know what Earl is. He's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Well, that's the truth. And of course, that's what, people, it was given the title of the Miracle on the Brazos. And the miracle part of it was that we were not supposed to win, and we did. So that's what the miracle was all about. But that didn't really aptly describe what took place because, they had the blue chip players and we didn't. And they had the history of success and we didn't. But on that particular day and that particular game, we were the best team on the field.
So you're not supposed to win all of that. And Texas, of course, we know their history. You ended up beating them more than just that game. There was the Worm. There was the 1980 team. There were other teams. And like I said, you played anybody, all of the big boys, and you played them head up and won some of those games too.
Yeah, well, that was my philosophy, Smoak, is that I wanted to compete against the best, because to do that, you have to become the best and believe that you can be the best and beat those teams. So we just took them on. I mean, you go back and look at the schedules that we played on the road.
Mm-hmm.
That we didn't get many of those folks at home. We had to travel, and but we wanted to play them, and it made us better. It made us a better team. And if we didn't get all beat up, that was the big key. That's why people don't know a lot about this, but I was also a track coach in my college career, so I knew how to train people for conditioning and running. And so we were probably, Smoak, one of the best conditioned teams through 4 quarters in any game of any team in the country. And that was a little thing that nobody really thought about or knew about. But our kids took great pride in the fact that they knew what they had to give in the 4th quarter.
Coach Taft, the Hall of Famer Grant Taft, and without question, the number one first ever guest we ever had on this show when we began it back in April of 2020, and we've sat down so many times and looked back at the history. Just a couple of more things, Coach, and thank you as always for your time. What did that win actually in the end mean to Baylor?
Well, I think the big thing that it meant to the Baylor and Baylor people is that we could play the best in our conference toe-to-toe, and we could win. And they knew we did it the right way, and we brought in youngsters that maybe Texas did not take because somebody was better than they were. But through our development program, by the time those guys were ready to play, they honestly were as good as anybody. And it just surprised so many people, but it was no surprise to us, and it certainly wasn't a surprise to our team that they could line up against anybody and win.
All right, so how much did that help? Because you were a great recruiter to get players to come to Baylor. We know all the stories. When you had basically no facilities. You had the stadium that was well off of campus. We know about the locker room that was basically like a closet. J.J. Joe was discussing that the other day, was underneath the stands. That didn't change the facilities immediately by no means, but what did it mean when you picked up the phone or go to visit a school, to go visit a prospect, at least that particular win, and also winning the Southwest Conference?
Well, it was huge, as you can imagine, Smoak, because people love winners. And not only do the players, but the parents and the aunts and the uncles gravitate to that area. So that's what made the difference for us, is that we were able to win, back up what we believed and what we talked about. And then that made it very, very easy for us to recruit, although at the time we didn't have the equal facilities to Texas and other schools that we were competing against. But we had that one thing that young people were looking for, was a place where they could come and be the best they could be and be a part of a winning program. And that's still true today. Anybody out there that's coaching at any school, if you can establish that, then you can grow a program that competes.
You had a great staff and continued with guys that had won elsewhere, and we know about when they even left Baylor or when you were no longer the coach and how successful some of them were and legendary. What was it about you? Coaches can tell, looking at a player, whether they're in T-shirts and a short or on film or in person at a game, if they have that in them. Yet you weren't going to always get the dudes, at least the blue chips. But you cultivated, you developed the talent. Is that just something that is just like an instinct you've had inside of your eyes and brain?
You know, you hit on something that few people have really thought about. But see, my background coming in from the small schools where we didn't have the money, we didn't have the facilities. So how do you go about recruiting the kind of individuals that can become winners in that circumstance? And so that's what's my background, is that I knew how, coming into a place like Baylor, I knew how to recruit and how to select youngsters that are going to be totally different 3 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they are what they are at this point, but what are they going to be 3 years from now? That, if you boiled it down, I think that was a major key to our success, plus having some really good coaches that knew what they were doing, was that we could project a youngster out of high school basically what he would be 3 or 4 years from now. And a lot of schools went for the top blue chippers at the time. And interestingly enough, some of them were peaked out. You know, they never got any better. They stayed where they were, which was good, but they never really developed. And so we selected youngsters that 4 years from now, they're going to be totally different physically, mentally, and even spiritually.
What is it like to watch as you do your children, grandchildren, or others? What is it like as a coach to see that they have that potential and then they meet it? Is that like the ultimate, like your heart warms up watching a young athlete become or reach their potential?
Absolutely. And here's another thing, Smoak, that people don't realize is that when you start with a youngster, you can see potentially what he's going to be. He may not can see that, or he may be overestimating what he can be. Sometimes they do that. But to be able to see that and figure a way to develop talent, that skill, attitude, that determination, that belief, if you will, that they can do in that team, they can beat anybody. And that was a real key to what we were able to do. We recruited youngsters that had potential for development. At the time, Baylor couldn't go out and get a so-called blue chipper, but we took guys that in 4 years could beat the blue chipper.
All right, so they're going to honor the team, the memory, the team, the players, coaching staff, anyone attached to that team 50 years ago in November, but they're going to honor the team in September before or the weekend that they're playing the Air Force Academy, which to me is really, really cool that they're going to be in town for that game. What is that? Yeah. And you had a great relationship back in the day. With Fisher DeBerry, among others that were a part of the U.S. Air Force football program. But
absolutely,
what does this mean to you? 50 years ago, and here you are, and they're going to honor the fact that it's the 50th anniversary.
Wow. I hadn't thought that much about it, but you're bringing back some lumps in my throat to see those youngsters develop from where they were to be able to win on that football field, do it with integrity, a great amount of pride, and effort. One of the things that we really based everything on was an individual, thus the team, giving total effort to everything they attempted to do. And we asked for that not only on the football field, but in the classroom and in their behavior out of the classroom. And so, it was a combination of things that made our team what they were. They became very close. They believed in each other. They believed in their coaching. And when we said sick them, they sicked them.
Oh, you did. And you did throughout your career. I'm glad I asked you that question. I love the reaction, the emotions from you. That it's time to honor that team because of the calendar, because of the 50 years, and there's the 20 years and 30 years and 40 to 50 years, and here you are being able to talk about it again. And
honestly, it is just hard to think about and believe.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going to games when I was a young coach, and they were honoring a team that had been, successful or something. And it's just a great thing for me, for Donnell and our girls and the coaching staffs and their families to see the team honored and recognized these 50 years later, because Smoak, they really were.
Yeah, they earned it. They deserved it. And it's a memory that Baylor fans will always remember. And, of course, you giving me the time, as you've done so many times. You've always given me the time. But, my God, I love talking to you. And I love going down the trips of memory lane and also seeing how you're doing. And thank you so much for your time and in sharing those memories and some of the moments that led to that miracle on the Brazos and the win that you said, as you said, was planned to beat Texas, that led to a Southwest Conference championship.
That's right. Well, we love you, Smoak, and the great job you do. I'm at your beck and call and always have been.
Thank you so much, Coach. We love you. I love you. Thank you.
All right, buddy. Bye-bye now.
That's the great, the legend, Grant Teaff. Baylor will honor the 1974 Southwest Conference championship team in September before the weekend that they host the U.S. Air Force Academy coming to town in September at McLean Stadium. This is, 365 Sports.
Fantasy Sports EVO, the next evolution of daily fantasy sports. Tired of traditional fantasy sports where you spend hours upon hours studying individual players? EVO's unique team-based platform makes it easier than ever for all sports fans to play. No need to know individual players. Just choose your contest, select your teams, and enjoy the game. Whether you access our website from a desktop, mobile device, or the app, the experience is the same. EVO is for all sports fans. Join Fantasy Sports EVO and experience the evolution.
For Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome to Paul Catalina's Top 5, presented by TexasBeefHouse.com. It's auction day at TexasBeefHouse.com. Bid on beef and use our promo code 365sports for a discount at checkout. Today, we're going to go through Big 12 questions. Tomorrow, we're going to do Big 10 questions. And on Friday, we're going to do ACC questions. Or maybe I flipped that and reversed it. I don't know what the order the slides are in. It's a show, people. Big 12 questions. Number 5. Is Utah's offense only Cam Rising? I don't ask this just because of one game last week where Isaac Wilson had to come in the second half and play when he didn't expect to against Baylor. I point to last year when Cam Rising was out the entire year and their offense was, So if Cam Rising's finger issue lingers, and there's no reason now to think that it will, but if it does, what do they have that's not Cam Rising, and can they produce on offense if he gets injured again? That's a huge question that the Utes have to answer for the rest of the year. With him, contender, maybe the best team top to bottom in the Big 12. Without him, they're incomplete. Clearly, this is the guy, and they need him to make that offense run. Number 4, can Kansas commit to the run? This is something I didn't think I'd be asking in a wide zone offense run by Jeff Grimes. But after the game against Illinois, I feel like I have to. You have Daniel Highshaw and Devin Neal, both guys who are going to be NFL running backs, and an offensive line that opens holes for them, and was averaging 4 to 6 yards a carry last week against an Illinois defense that's pretty good. And what did you do when you had the lead last week? You threw the ball. You got too cute. You put it too much on Jalen Daniels. Give Jalen Daniels a break. He's really good. Maybe not as elite as we thought. He's really good. Let him be a fourth quarter magician when you need him to be a fourth quarter magician. If you don't need him to be a magician, just let him do this. Or this. Or this. And this pantomime has been brought to you by theater. Anyway, they've got to commit to the run. Devin Neal, Daniel Highshaw, best thing they've got going on that offense, and a good offensive line. So use it. Use it. It's like McDonald's, not turning the fryer on. You got French fries, man. Cook the French fries. Number 3. Can Kansas State pass their way to a win? There's going to be a game where that running game gets stopped. And early on, Tulane was doing a pretty good job of stopping it. Now, Kansas State eventually too much for them. They have too much talent in the running game between Avery Johnson, DJ Giddens, and Dylan Edwards. Just too much. Plus, the short passing game to those backs is enormous. But what happens when somebody fools them, befuddles them, stuffs them at the line? Can Avery Johnson throw them to a win? That was something that Quinn Ewers had to answer year over year at Texas. Now the answer we know is yes, absolutely. Quinn Ewers can throw you to a win. He could not early on, though. And this is early on in Avery Johnson's career. So how quickly does he get to the point where he can throw them to a win? Number 2, can Colorado get anything from their fronts? Or is it too late? Deion Sanders said this week he's confident, especially in offensive line coach Phil Lodeholt, former Oklahoma offensive lineman, and he's confident in Pat Shurmur. But if he's confident in those guys, maybe, and he's confident in the talent that they have, which I think we all question at this point, we do have to wonder if they're running the right scheme for the people that they have, or they're just running the scheme for Shedeur. I think it's option B. Is that this is the offense that Deion and Shedeur want to run because it highlights Shedeur, but right now it's also highlighting the fact that he's human, and when he gets hit, it's an owie. You don't want that over and over and over again, and it's clearly frustrating Shedeur Sanders. He threw his offensive line under the bus. It is calling his leadership into question. Again, sometimes you got to help the quarterback out. Much like Kansas has to with Jalen Daniels, Deion needs to with his own flesh and blood. He sprang forth from your loins, Deion. Protect him. Number 1. Eventually. There we go. Is Texas Tech in trouble? Now this guy, he remembers a different time. A time where you didn't almost lose to Abilene Christian, and you didn't go up to Washington State and might as well have not gone there at all. He's fun. He's carefree. He's high on shrooms. He's happy. Can this kid dance like this again this year? I don't know. They've got problems. Big problems on defense. Big problems with their offensive line. As a matter of fact, their problems and Colorado's problems are pretty much the same. Can they get anything out of that? Is this fixable this year? Right now, it's heading down the track of they're going to make coaching staff changes. I know that Joey McGuire doesn't want to do that. He likes the coaches he has in place, but it is pointing in the direction of whatever you're doing scheme-wise, offensive line hasn't worked the entire time Joey's been there. You've got quarterbacks getting hurt every year. You're not able to run the ball consistently if Taj Brooks is out. So it also tells you how damn good Taj Brooks is that he is able to deal with all this when the offensive line is spotty at best. And the defense has just never come around. they're going to have to totally change philosophies over there. Something to match their offense. That's a tough thing to do. That is the top 5. We're back to wrap it up right now.
All right, Paul, thank you very much. And tomorrow, Max Olson has said he's in. Sam Kahn is in. There's a couple of other guests. Mickey Spagnola covers the Cowboys after their very impressive opening win against Cleveland, that he is in, and that's got off the radar on top 5 tomorrow. So a loaded up show that we will have for tomorrow. If you haven't hit the like button, it's not too late. We would appreciate that. I sometimes wonder, there's 150 or 400 or whatever the number is watching the chat room or in the chat room, and yet the likes are like at 105 or whatever the number might be. So we would appreciate that. And also, if you haven't subscribed, please do on 365 Sports Tonight. Emery Winter, thank you very much. He's dialing up all of what he needs and what we need, and also 365 Sports Tonight on the local CW. Thanks to also Garrett Ross, Jack McKenzie, who's walking out the door incognito. For Craig Smoak and for Paul Catalina, for you, our audience, thank you. Our sponsors, thank them. I'm David Smoak. Have a great night. This is 365 Sports.